Hello and welcome back to the Raspberry Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mallorca BJJ and Yoga Festival. This is a 5-night training holiday. I don't want to say training camp, it's a training holiday in a 5-star luxury hotel on the beautiful island of Mallorca. This is in October. You're going to have a chance to train jiu-jitsu with some of the very finest jiu-jitsu instructors that you're going to find. First, the big man himself, Mauricio Gomez, the White Bear. You also have Clark Gracie, aka Jiu-Jitsu's most photogenic man. You also have some of the best UK grapplers out there. Fionn Davis, Ross Nichols, myself, and also my guest today, Sam Cook. We're all going to be out there. You can hang out with us and learn Jiu-Jitsu from us. Well, whichever you want, or both. You also have the opportunity to do some yoga. They have a load of yoga instructors out there. I don't know much about yoga instructors, but they seem like pretty good ones. You might even see me trying the stretch, which is comical and is worth admission alone. You also can do water sports, free diving. They have a free diving instructor there, and paddle boarding all included. If you're interested, then check them out at MallorcaBJJYogaFest.com. And you can get a cheeky little discount. If you use promo code EARLY850, that will get you 5% off of the festival price, and it will also get you a free massage. I was going to say that massage is not supplied by me, but you never know. So use code word EARLY850 and get a free massage with potentially me. Check it out at MallorcaBJJYogaFest.com. Today's guest is Samantha Cook. Sam is one of the very best grapplers that the UK has ever produced. Both gi and no gi, she has accomplished many things, especially over the last couple of years since she got her black belt. A really great grappler. Also a great ambassador for women's jiu-jitsu. She runs her womanars, her women seminars. So clever. Just a good person. Good person, and I've known Sam for a very long time. Been trying to convince her to come on this podcast for literally years, and she's pretty much just refused every time. But finally, we managed to break through. I convinced her, or someone else convinced her on my behalf, and I had a chance to sit down and chat to her. So thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoy listening. Check it out.
I didn't move the mic on it. I feel like I need to poo. I don't know. I'm not sure. Shall I try and go? Can I try and go first?
Try and go for a poo?
Yeah, I'll be quick.
Okay,
it doesn't take
I am recording it.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to go for a poo.
Okay, yeah.
Be back in 10 minutes.
I think I might keep this in. Genuinely. So, Sam Cook, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
You looking forward to this?
No.
You're so nervous.
I'm really not. I've been avoiding it for so long.
Well, do you know what my first question was going to be?
No.
Why has it taken us so long for you to come on the podcast? Why have you been avoiding me for so long? I probably asked you 2 years ago, maybe?
Oh, yeah, I think it was
maybe longer.
Just a bit nervous about oversharing information and giving all my secrets away. Telling stories about myself that people don't really need to know. Let me see
if I can draw that out of you.
Okay.
You'll see. How have you been anyway? I haven't seen you in about a year.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time. I'm good. Traveling, competing quite a lot.
Yeah, I can't really keep up with everything that you do, mainly because they're gi competitions and I don't really follow that world too much. But you've been doing pretty well.
It's been good, yeah. It was a good start to this year. I mean, I had a really busy year.
Do you know how many
year.
times you compete a year?
No, not really. It's usually about once a month.
Really?
Yeah, and it's been some crazy trips, like 1 week in Tokyo, 1 week in Rio.
So one of the things that you do that I really don't follow at all, because it's, at least with the IBJJF stuff, there's gi and no gi ones. So I kind of get what's going on for the most part with the IBJJF. But you do the UAE stuff.
Yeah. And
they pretty much only have gi tournaments for the most part. So I don't really follow anything that's going on there. But they have like a crazy system, don't they?
For?
Just like they have a league and then you need to qualify to go to the Worlds, and then you can win loads of money and stuff.
Yeah, so they run the Grand Slams, which are great. And last year, so I'd done the London Grand Slam, and then they started introducing more like Tokyo, Rio Grand Slam. So I was like, do you know what? Coming probably towards the end of my competition years,
Are you?
Well, I think I tell you this every year that I'm going to stop competing, but yeah, I feel like it.
Really? How old are you now?
I'm 31.
Are you 31?
I'll be 32 this year.
You're masters.
Yeah, exactly.
You still compete adult though?
Yeah. I think I quite like the fact that people think I'm like 25. So
I knew that you were at least 29, 30. I don't know. I knew that you were at least around about 30.
Yeah.
But I'd have you pegged for mid-20s,
yeah.
maybe younger.
And so I feel like
Great skin.
if I go
I'm envious.
compete in
No
Masters.
wrinkles.
I have loads of wrinkles.
Not really.
Too much laughter.
No.
I notice it more when I lose weight. When my face gets thinner, all my wrinkles come out more.
Okay, so keep bulking.
Keep eating. Fat for life. So I feel like if I fight Masters one time, then people will be like, oh,
people will know.
It will just give the game away, you know? Benjamin Button.
I think you might just have given the game away.
Damn. See,
this is exactly what I didn't want to happen.
Come on. I'm old. I've got wrinkles.
So you're going around and doing all these tournaments. Okay, wait. Let's stick on what you were saying, actually.
Yeah.
So you think that your competition years are nearing an end?
I think so. I think
why?
Because last year I had a really busy year and we travelled so many places and it was incredible, along with like teaching seminars and camps and competitions. And it was amazing, but my anxiety with flying is actually getting worse rather than better.
Are you not good with flying?
I'm not a terrible person with flying, but I generally, when I sit on the plane, think I'm probably going to die. And why did I do this? And it's usually the smaller flights.
Yeah, well, they're on like smaller planes.
Short ones, yeah. The big planes.
I think my worst ever flight was actually to like from London to Dundee. It was like a really short one. It's like a 45-minute flight or something, but I could feel the entire plane shaking the whole way.
Yeah.
Flying's a very weird thing. Humans are not designed to do that.
No.
Every time I get on a plane, I just go, I'm 100% going to die and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I just get myself okay with it.
Yeah.
And then every time I land, I'm like, another day we live.
Yeah. So I had a bad flight. I remember, one flight going over to Amsterdam, and I think this was for my first brown belt competition. And we were in this little tin pot plane that had 2 seats either side and a door to the cockpit that, I don't know, looked like it was made of paper.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, okay, small plane, I'm prepared, I'm ready. And then the pilot came out wearing like some fucking beads around his neck. And I was like, just praying, not religious at all. And I thought, oh my God, he's Dutch. Maybe he's high. I don't know. He looks way too in a polo top and beads. But that actually wasn't a bad flight. My worst one was last year going to Spain. And I feel terrible. So my mum hasn't basically been on holiday for like 7-8 years on a plane. And I was like, Mum, there's the Vieira Brothers camp is coming up, and I wanted my brother to come because I wanted to grade him.
Okay.
So he was coming, and I was like, Mum, why don't you come? Like, it's only a short flight to Spain. We can have like a nice holiday. It's all like inclusive, very relaxed. Like loads of families go. And she was like, yeah, why not? Actually, let's go. I haven't flown for years. She was never really a comfortable flyer either, and this was probably the worst flight I've ever been on. So I think it was with EasyJet. Again, standard sized plane, nothing too crazy. Pretty much on the way there, not too bad. Turbulence was okay. We come to landing. We're literally coming down onto the runway and straight back up again. So I was like, I've flown a lot. This is never...
Your mum turns around and was like, I haven't flown in a while. Is this what we do now?
Yeah. So my mum was like, Sammy, what's going on? Nothing. Maybe the runway's busy. I don't know. They didn't say anything over the speaker to let us know. So we were like, okay, no information. Nobody's really panicking at this point. It's okay. All right. Okay. We get kind of back up. So then the problem is we hit that kind of turbulent zone for like 20 minutes, then circling round to come back down again. And it's like hell. So I get really bad travel sickness in cars. Okay. I can't, if I'm the driver or if I'm the passenger, I'm fine. But if I'm in the back seat, I'm absolutely ruined. So the turbulence also screws me over. So at this point, I couldn't really speak so much. I was just gripping onto my seat thinking, I don't vomit. I just am really nauseous.
Sure.
And just really want to lie on the floor because my blood pressure takes a dive. So we came back around and they were like, oh, just a little bit of tailwind. We're going to come back down and land again. Oh, great. Fine. Yeah, no. So came all the way down, probably even closer to the runway this time, and an even more aggressive pull up again. So at this point, I'm like, I feel like I need to pray. There's like tears running down my eyes. And I'm like, who's hijacked a plane to Spain? Why would anyone ever do this? What's going on here? And my mum was in like an absolute state. So my brother at this point kind of took the role of being the cool, calm guy, like white as a sheet, kind of staring out the window like, everything's fine. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Crapping his pants. We all were. So, you just think, I'm not religious. This is a time I feel like I should start praying. I don't, because they didn't tell us any information. They kind of mentioned a bit of tailwind, but not enough to be like, we're literally about to touch ground and come back up again. So I'm thinking, we're going to run out of fuel. I don't know that much about planes and flights. My mum since has watched quite a lot of programs in terms of how much reserve fuel that you have. They're like, we're going to fly to Valencia. Valencia? Where's Valencia? Like, how far even is this?
We don't have enough fuel.
We don't. I was like, we've done 3 takeoffs now. Where like, how much fuel does this plane have? So then they're like, about 20 minutes to Valencia. Oh my god, I'm literally in that turbulent zone the whole way. So I'm like white as a sheet, hanging on my chair, like, oh my god, I'm gonna be sick. The people next to me are like just sat there reading their books but clearly shaking. Everybody's looking around at each other like, what's going on? And my poor mum just had a terrible time. So we land in Valencia. We can't get off the plane because we have no boarding rights. So my mum, I was like, let's get the coach from Valencia to where did we stay? Alicante.
Okay.
And she was like, we have to
So you
get
were
off.
meant to be flying back.
Yeah, so we landed in Valencia to refuel because we were going to run out of fuel. I said, we're going to land on the sea. So we refueled and we're sat there again, maybe like 20, 30 minutes. Again, not really much information. She was just like walking up and down. Anybody want some water? Water? Can I have something a bit stronger? I was fearing for my life. So we sit there on the plane waiting. At this point, it's getting quite warm. Obviously, it's really quite warm in Valencia.
Yeah.
Not that I've never been there before. And my mum's really stressed, and I felt so bad for her because it was me that was like, "Come on this flight." You know, I fly once a month to countries all over the world and have no problems. Like a bit of turbulence at worst, and this was pretty horrendous. So she was like, well, let's get off, let's hire a car, but we have no boarding rights, so we can't leave the plane. And then obviously the air hostess come round and they start explaining, there's really aggressive tailwind. I personally think it was probably a novice pilot, since having watched some airplane programs and learning a bit more about it. Anyway, so we do take off again and we do manage to land, and we're sat quite at the back of the plane. There was quite a lot of tailwind, but anyway, we landed, we were safe, and then she just worried about flying home for the whole week.
Really?
Bless her. So we had a really, really nice time. It generally was a really good trip, and obviously being able to give my brother his purple belt was also a nice touch to it after being 8 years at blue belt.
8 years?
Yeah. But he kind of went the MMA route, so he had a bit of a gap and a break, but it's great now because I'm his master.
So did you ever take it? Did he get blue belt before you?
I got my blue before him. I can't remember when he got his blue, to be honest. Yeah, I can't remember, but I overtook him.
Did you start training at the same time? Or?
No, I had a break in my career at blue belt. Between blue and purple, when I went to university, I pretty much took about 9 months off.
Okay.
And that was because I got smashed by Leonie at my first blue belt competition. Okay. So she was the first person to ever beat me.
Really?
I was like smashing all these small white belt competitions, like classic Hereford Open and things. Never fought anything massive at white belt. And then a week before the Bristol Open, my coach, Italo Ferreira, who was also kind of a part coach of Leonie, or like quite good friends with Leonie at the time, was like, Sam, we're going to grade you to blue belt and you're going to fight Leonie, because his other white belt girls had been like, we think you should grade Sam, like, she's been killing it, like move her up sort of thing. No, that's not very fair. So a week before he gave me my blue belt, and this is when I was also fighting in lightweight, believe it or not. And I fought Leonie. I have no idea what happened, but I ended up on the ground and I think she armbarred me or choked me or something, but it was brutal, absolutely brutal. And
did you know Leonie at this point?
No.
Okay.
So since then, obviously, naturally, I befriended her because she was a badass. And I was like, oh, let's be friends. Please help me. And we've been friends ever since. But she was the reason I basically stopped jiu-jitsu.
Really?
And took most part of a year off. Probably trained intermittently, but not much. But then I was also kind of going to university and things like that, so I had different life things going on. Sure.
And I can't remember how we got on the flight.
UAE tournaments somehow.
You were talking about being the end of your career.
Oh yeah.
And by the sounds of it, it's going to be the end of your career because you couldn't possibly deal with the number of flights.
Yeah, potentially. Like Europeans is like always will hold a place in my heart, and I'll always go to Europeans. And
are you genuinely thinking about slowing down the competitions, or?
Yeah, I think
the last 12 months have been your most successful, no?
Yeah, and it's that weird.
But like significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just from literally booking the ticket and going and putting myself out there. And
I don't think it's because you went there. I don't think that's how tournaments work.
No, okay.
It's just like it's really the hardest part of the tournament is getting the flight over there. No, it's not. It's actually doing the fighting. But
true. But I think
you've had a really successful year. You've gone to a lot of international tournaments.
Yeah.
And you're now one of the best women grapplers in the gi, especially.
Yeah.
One of the top women in the world. And you kind of that was in the last 12 months, really?
Yeah.
The last 18 months?
So I would say my best year was my first year at brown belt. So I feel from that point kind of just excelled and was killing it for a whole year. and then I don't know. It's hard to compare.
I know, but brown belt and black belt are different.
Yeah, it's true.
Kind of.
Nobody really cares what you do at brown belt.
They don't care what you've done at brown belt when you get your black belt.
Yeah,
it's only relevant
it's like
at the
you
time.
reset.
But the black belt lasts forever because you never get another belt.
No,
you know. So you win a tournament with black belt, and that's yours until you die. You win one at brown, and it kind of it becomes irrelevant as soon as you get the next grade. Which is why people shouldn't worry so much. Don't put so much stress over what you do at the low grades. When you get a black belt, start stressing about how.
Absolutely. Well, they say, don't they? You kind of start a clean slate. And I think unless you... So obviously with the UAE tournaments, you fight brown-black, which is really good for the brown belts.
Oh, so you were beating black belts when you were brown belt anyway?
Some, yeah. It's great. It's really kind of catered towards the brown belts, I think, because they're pretty much the underdog and they don't have anything to lose against losing against top black belts.
Well, it used to be... it's just a... numbers thing, isn't it? There's just not enough black belt women.
No, exactly.
It used to be purple, brown, black for all belt for men and women,
and men as well.
Yeah. When the first year that the UAE, because my first ever tournament of purple belt was the first, I believe, the first ever UAE tournament in London.
Okay.
It was at Dartford Judo.
Oh yeah. I think I was there.
And
Leonie was there.
Probably. So. And I fought a black belt in my second fight.
Nice.
I got my purple belt like a few weeks beforehand. So like, you know, they combined everything, and then it was just brown and black. Then it was just black, and now still just brown and black for the women. Yeah. But I think eventually that will change.
Yeah, absolutely, because they again purple, brown, black, and now they give purple belts their own division. There are a lot of brown belts out there now. I think you would probably get more black belts sign up if there were less brown belts, because they don't like to lose face, right?
Yeah,
and lose to brown belts. But to be honest with you, with the women, it's quite a close margin between brown and black, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like so for example, Tamara and I, so she's a brown belt and I'm currently I always fight her in the final pretty much. It's usually her and I, and because we're the highest ranked within the world ranking, we're always on opposite sides of the bracket. So it's usually her and I that get to the final, and she's a brown belt, and I beat her in Abu Dhabi Grand Slam, not this year, the year before. And then since then, she didn't fight Tokyo. I fought Tokyo and won there. That was a pretty awesome competition. One of the best ones I've ever been to. And then she came to LA. So she was on the same side of the bracket in LA because she hadn't been fighting the season. And I lose by like advantages. It's crazy. I make silly mistakes, and I think a lot of it is a mental battle. And then she went on to win in Rio, and then I lost her in the Grand Slam by referee's decision in LA. And then we come to London Grand Slam, and so in between that, I've been fighting some of the national pros to get the points. So I fought her in Spain 2 weeks before the London Grand Slam and beat her, but then I'm like the person who plays, you know, who if you play pool, I can't pot the black. I'm that person who can get all the way through and smash it and struggle potting the black. And that's basically my problem that I'm having. And
the black ball is the world.
It's the final.
The final.
Yeah. Is the final. So she's obviously a brown belt. I mean, she should be a black belt by now, to be honest with you. I actually think
that the brown and black belt on an elite level are essentially indistinguishable. Female and male.
Yeah.
Because actually, look at the number of elite. A lot of elite brown belts won't be given their black belt until their instructor believes that they can actually enter black belt division at the top
and do well. Yeah, exactly.
You don't go brown belt all the way until you're bottom of black belt, then go black belt and start at the bottom and work up.
Yeah.
You see half the guys who get their brown belts then go and win the world championships a black belt the next year.
Yeah.
You know, so actually I think, you know, obviously there's just a much bigger gap between a top level black belt and a low level brown belt.
Yeah.
But I think between a top level brown belt and a top level black belt, there actually isn't much of a difference.
No, exactly. So, you know, it's no really issue for me now for fighting brown belts at these competitions because I'm used to it. You know, we travel all over the world and compete there. How do we get onto this? Back to my retirement. This is me announcing my retirement.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk you out of quitting, basically.
Oh, yeah. So what I wanted to say was, and I know this is a really, what's the word? I think I drank too much coffee. Not a common quote, but like quite a famous quote of people don't realise how close they are when they give up. And it's not that I feel like I'm giving up. I feel like I really gave it a good shot. The travel takes a lot out of me. But I also think getting older, I don't necessarily want to be the person that's hanging on to the divisions. Do you know what I mean? I'm fighting, like, Tamara's 10 years younger than me. Like, most of the girls that I fight in the finals of competitions are 10 years younger than me. And yes, I'm in the final, but that's not quite enough. And again, I don't know. I can argue both sides in that, yeah, you get into the final, that's great, but I'm not fighting for second place. I'm fighting for first place. But then equally, you could argue, well, if you don't fight at all, then you don't get first place either. So
when you are in the final, you are fighting for first place.
Yeah.
When you're at home, you're not.
No, exactly.
So that's so interesting. I had no idea about that. You were so you're considering not really competing next year, or
I'd really like. So this year now, I'm going to fight the World Pro.
That's in like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
no, 3 weeks, 2.5.
2.5 weeks. Yeah, in
27th.
Abu Dhabi. Yeah, 26. Yeah, that end of the week. This will be my 5th World Pro, and I've never medalled on this stage. So I fought twice at purple belt. I won the ticket. Lost to Monique Elias 1 year. The second year, I can't remember. I know I fought Claudia Duval. I think it's in they used to run the Absolute. I get a little bit confused. My memory's not the best.
Sure.
So I'd fought Fernanda Mazzelli and Claudia Duval and beat Claudia. Didn't beat Fernanda Mazzelli, but they'd given her 2 points for taking me down off of her knees or something, which wasn't 2 points. And again, I wasn't really aware at that time. And then fought again. So then the following year went... I fought once at purple, once at brown. Was it twice at brown? Anyway, it doesn't matter. That was completely pointless. Anyway, I've never medalled. I've never made it there. Last year that I fought, I tore my hamstring in February. So I think it was a bit soon to come back and compete. And I fought Jessica Swanson. She's really good. And if you make a mistake with her, it's game over. So she caught me really early on. And then I fought the repechage and lost to Samara again through trying to defend a knee bar on my leg that wasn't really working at that point. So I'm trying not to... I put way too much pressure on myself when there's like $10,000 on the line. So last year, this bracket is great for me. Do you know, the UAE, I feel like the UAE genuinely like me. They're very pro Sam, like in terms of like media exposure and interviews and things like this. Like they're very pro a non-Brazilian champion, if I'm honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is why I think that they've brought in all the not the Brazilian qualifiers, but all the qualifiers, so that there are only 2 spots for Brazilians or anybody from their country to go through. So they're very pro me, and I tend to just
I guess like
fluff it up a little bit.
If you look at what the UAE are trying to do, they're trying to take jiu-jitsu away from the stronghold of the Brazilians.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that starts with, maybe they're not going to get an Arabic speaker as world champion yet,
no.
But that's obviously their end goal. But the first step is to get it away from the Brazilians.
Yeah, exactly, with all the qualifiers and things. So that's coming up in the next 2 weeks, which I'm preparing for. And then we have the World Championships this year. Hoping to get a good bracket for that, for having competed quite a lot of IBJJF tournaments as well. And then after that, that's what I mean. Like
this is the World Mundials.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the World. So that'll be my second year at black belt.
How did you do last year?
3rd place last year. Lost to Anna Carolina in the semi-finals. So yeah, hoping to do better this time. I want to kind of just give it everything I can. A lot of it for me is like a lot of self-belief, basically. I think it's really hard to kind of believe in yourself. And one of the things so somebody asked me about, I think it was Sarah Mariner, had asked me what happened from you to go from like fighting these smaller tournaments to fighting big competitions and actually going and winning.
Yeah.
And to be really honest with you, it was having somebody who believed in me. So somebody who was able to say, what do you mean? Of course you can do this. You can be the best in the world. Like, and then with repetition and technique, but that somebody, whenever you doubt yourself, to basically be like, no, well, this is why we're putting the work in. This is what we're working towards. This is it. You can't even doesn't even entertain it. Something that you respect or you admire, or somebody's opinion that you really value. And for me, it was Brad. Yeah. So Bradley, when I first met Bradley, just so like incredibly confident, like his jiu-jitsu was amazing. So we met in Abu Dhabi, one of the years that I'd won the trials, and we trained together. And he was obviously fighting at middleweight for Abu Dhabi, which is 85 kilos. And I was fighting under 70. So, a bit of a weight difference between us. But he rolled with me in a way that he didn't put any pressure on me. Everything that I went for, he went with and changed for something else. And he had like this complete flair about him. And I was just absolutely blown away. And I was like, how is your jiu-jitsu like this? Like, no offense, most guys that I roll with usually, put quite a lot of pressure on, do use a bit of strength. I'm not saying that they don't have technique as well, but there's a certain element behind it that is like, pressure and strength based. And he's like, oh, well, this is how I think jiu-jitsu should be. It's meant to be about the gentle art. He said, I don't take any pride in like smashing you, but, we could actually have a really good exchange and, with movement and stuff. So then he and I started training together for about 6 months, and then after that our relationship developed. And then for him at competition, I would start to kind of just doubt myself, and I'm like, yeah, but I can't beat this person in the final. And he's like, what? Like, but not to the point where somebody's just fueling your ego and just being like, oh no, of course you can, you're really good. It was genuinely like, no, Sam, you're literally the best. You can beat them. You can beat anybody on a given day. And then that kind of belief in me, being surrounded by that on a regular basis, just made me believe so much more in myself. So I fight so much better when I believe in myself, and not that I generally thought that a lot of my success was just a fluke. I'm like, oh well, maybe this person didn't turn up in the division, or yeah, but she did this mistake, so that's how I won. And he was like, no, your technique is solid. You've trained hard for it. Your cardio is good. You're good at jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh, okay. It's really hard to believe in that yourself.
I think that's quite a natural thing that a lot of people.
Exactly.
I think it's called like imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
have you heard
absolutely,
it?
Yeah.
Where people are just like, oh yeah, I'm going to get figured out today.
Yeah.
Like every time you go to talk, like today's the day where they're going to figure out that I'm terrible at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I have this so bad with my job, like in life, everything. I just feel like people are one day going to be like, oh, you're a fraud. And I'm like, but then there are some days that I think most people in life are winging it. Everybody, most people.
I think by the rationale that someone who has achieved what you have achieved could believe that it was a fluke, by that rationale, everyone's winging it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can recreate that sort of success over and over again by accident.
No, and I understand it is to do with like your training and repetition and learning, and take a responsibility for your learning as well. But it's still so hard to have that self-belief. But yeah, like you said, loads of people
do you know why?
have this.
Do you have you're a pretty smart girl, I like to think.
Me and my mind, we aren't friends.
Do you have any idea like what that comes from, whether it stems from something, or whether it's just like a part of your makeup that you don't believe in yourself?
One of my personalities.
There we go. We'll get onto that. We'll get onto that at some point.
Because there are sometimes part of the year. So Europeans, for me, always falls. I don't know whether it's because it's after Christmas and seeing family and friends, or having a good time and relaxing, but always falls on a good time of year for me where I feel like unstoppable. And genuinely, even if
you won Euros last year, didn't you?
Yeah. So I won it 4 years in a row.
Oh wow. Okay.
So twice at purple, twice at brown. My first year at black belt in 2018, I feel I was unfairly decided against in the final.
Was it a ref's decision?
Yeah. So it was a split referee's decision. And wow. I feel at some point there was a magical advantage given to my opponent, which even to this day I have no idea how they can warrant it. And I think it was a little bit biased, if I'm honest. Not that I'm bitter or anything. So I was pretty...
I was just about to say... Well, at least you're not bitter about it.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm just holding this on for life. So going this year and winning was a really big deal for me. Yeah. And I was really happy about it. I don't know if you saw the Flow Grappling had captured like the best moments of me just celebrating and being happy. Because the girl that I fought before the final, I knee barred her and it was a hideous sound that it still, I think, resonates in my head. And I generally don't like that. Like, I know some people are absolutely brutal and they're like,
it's part of the game.
Yeah, it is part of the game. But I do think also people are responsible for not letting things go so far and injuring themselves. I don't know. So I don't really...
They're responsible more than you
They're
are.
responsible,
100%.
yeah, absolutely. But I still hold it within me that I don't want to celebrate when I feel like potentially I've just injured her and put her out of training and competition. Yes, it's still her responsibility, but this may be the nice sound that comes out. So I couldn't really celebrate because I was like, oh great, I'm in the final, but this is a horrible sound that's now haunting me. But I felt completely unstoppable, and I don't know why it always falls on a good time for me, whether it's just that part, one of those personalities that comes out after Christmas or is around over Christmas, and then the doubting, insecure, anxious one comes out afterwards. But yeah, so I don't know. So for me, a lot of my success is dependent on not my personality. It's a weird...
But your mental state.
My mental state, absolutely.
So is this something that I assume you've dealt with throughout your entire grappling career?
Yeah, throughout my entire life, I think.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do. And I think a lot of people have mental health problems, like not problems necessarily, but issues that they have to deal with. And that kind of afflicts every part of their life. And because competition is such a stressful thing, and it just kind of... It can be so unnatural, even though I think there is a huge level of natural instinct that go into that level of competition. I think it's also highly unnatural. I think it's not something that I've explored too much, but I genuinely believe that competition is significantly more unnatural for women than it is for men, from an evolutionarily, a genetically a throwback. Fighting and violence and competition is kind of hardwired into men because we're like a tournament based species that men would compete for the female. Obviously back in the day, not these days so much, but I think that male competition is actually really natural to males, and I think the women competition is not very natural to women. So I actually can see that there could be a lot of those sort of issues of anxiety and lack of self-confidence and belief in yourselves as part of that. So have you dealt with, I was going to say, like, how do you deal with that, but actually it sounds like you're kind of,
it's an ongoing battle, I think.
It doesn't sound like you've quite cracked it yet.
No, absolutely not. And there are times where I think, I've got it, I've got it down, I'm able to tap into that focus, but I generally feel like it just wherever it falls on my mental state, and I for some reason can't really control that. And it's not, so when I explain to people like what I do, and people are like, I don't want to mess with you, literally the first thing they say, I don't want, and I said, what? Because I'll probably hug you to death. Like, in my head, it's not really a violent sport. It's a sport. I'm going there to kind of compete against somebody, but it's not in my head with the intention to hurt them. But I also think that ruthless mentality is kind of what makes people really successful, and not worrying about the other person and that you're going to hurt them or whichever. Because I've battled with this for a long time in terms of training and stuff, and it tends to be more with women. So I train with guys, so like I love training with Brad or any of the like our guys at the gym, because if I'm like a little bit spazzy or I go a bit rough, I don't really care. Like I'm like, you can take it, it's fine. Sure. In my head, women can take it. There's nothing that them saying to me like I'm fragile. I'm training in this sport, but I don't really want to get hurt. But for me, mentally, to kind of overcome that, because I never trained with women, so throughout most of my career between Bristol and then coming to London, I had a couple of like lower belts to train with, but not really somebody consistent, and not so many girls as what we've got now. So that was quite a big learning curve for me in terms of, when I used to kind of fight with some of the guys in Bristol, or even I don't care. I can literally just go absolutely ham on these guys and not worry about hitting them. I don't hit people.
But you're not worried about hurting people, yeah?
No, but then changing and coming to fights, and we have a lot of smaller girls too. I'm like, okay, I need to kind of maybe change the way that I train. And I thought, well, no, I shouldn't really. And Brad had spoken to a psychologist about this, and they kind of presented to him about having 100% days and 80% days, and a way of kind of like not passing the responsibility over to your partner or your training partner, but for me or for him, and then I kind of took it on board to be like, okay, if you want to train with me, you need to know that today's one of my 100% days. So it's ruthless. I'm going to be attacking the whole time and going for it. And, if you're willing to be part of that, then I feel like I've given them a chance to sort of say, no, I don't want you to be. Yeah. And I don't know if that's weird, but in my head, I've been fully transparent. So if I'm a bit rough or whichever, they kind of know that that's what's happening. Do you know what I mean? And they're, a willing participant.
You're being transparent, like, I'm going to go hard today.
Yeah, basically.
So either be ready for that or leave.
Yeah. We basically have a joke amongst the Fight Zone ladies. We call it Pancake Day, because they used to get pancaked underneath it. Yeah. And they're tough women, and these are like featherweight girls. Like the girls at our gym, like I'm one of the heaviest of like maybe a couple of people who are like middle plus. The rest of them are much lighter, but they are so game, and and it wasn't them stopping me and saying, Sam, you're being a bit too rough, do you know what I mean, and getting a bit funny about it. It was me stopping myself. Yeah. And actually just need to be like, I need to tell you that if you're going to roll with me, A, we're going to roll to black belt rules, I'm preparing for competition, and B, it's 100% day, it's pancake day. And then they're down, and it's cool.
You mentioned something there which sparked a thought in my head, which is you didn't roll with really any women up until you were at Fight Zone and, very late in your career, brown belt, black belt sort of level. I think this is quite a common theme for the top female competitors, which makes me wonder whether training with women is good or bad for women. And I don't have any thought on this. I'm literally just like spitballing this as we talk right now, but it does seem that all of the women that I've spoken to likely only like Fionn. Actually, as they came up in their career, there weren't the number of women in the sport that there are these days, especially in places like Fight Zone when you have a lot of women on your mats. And because generally it takes one woman to be successful to actually create a women's team behind it. So generally that woman being successful is going to come along when they're not actually training with a lot of women. So the question is training with a lot of women good, or actually is training with a lot of women bad for women?
Interesting. So that's what, when I say I didn't train with a lot of women, it just reminded me, that's not completely true. So what I used to do, so in Bristol, I injured my MCL at one point and then came back, rehabbed it and fought the London Open and lost to Martina, who's a really good friend of mine now. And she's also part of the same team. We train together quite a lot. And I thought, this is different. I've been training with guys and I think that this is a different kind of way of training. Women are, they fight differently to what men do. So then what I started to do was go to Denmark and Copenhagen. And I spent most of my time training for European camps there because there was Shanti, Ida, Yanni, Camilla, four middleweight black belt women training there.
What belt were you at this point?
I was purple. So I took myself over there to go and train with them. And to be honest with you, a lot of the stuff that I learned in terms of with my game now was built with those women, in particular Yanni. So Yanni spent loads of time with me.
Larson?
Yeah. Like show me her kind of like spider guard techniques, and I still use it. It's literally my bread and butter for my style of game now. So had I not gone over there, who knows where I would be now.
But even at that level, you won Euros that year.
Yeah, I went. Yeah.
So you were already international purple belt level,
But
when you were training with the
there.
Yeah, but like you were already that level.
Yeah.
When you were training with the girls.
Yeah.
I'm talking at like white belt, blue belt.
Yeah.
I just feel that actually potentially, and I'm not saying that it is or isn't the case, but it could be the case that women trying to train exclusively with women or even majority with women might not be as beneficial as training with men.
And I don't disagree with that. And I think, so at Fight Zone, we don't have ladies class. We don't have a women's class. We only have mixed classes. The time that I think that a women's only class comes into play, so obviously I run the Womanars, which are women-only seminars.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, that obviously brings a lot of women together. And I think that's important for them to come together, share experiences, as well as learn from each other and roll with each other. But I had a chat with Marco and James about having a women's class, and they were kind of like, well, we don't necessarily feel like we need it, because also like their classes are really, really super busy. Like it's absolutely rammed the whole evening. So when would there be a space for it? But how much are the women actually benefiting from this? And I think there is an element in terms of introducing women.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing for. Yeah.
And I think with the view of preparing them then to go into them intermediate classes, or like the mixed, not intermediate, the mixed classes. So in terms of women starting a new sport where they might be, like a little bit shy and not sure about, people come to my classes at Fight Zone and haven't done a forward roll for about 10 years. Yeah. Absolutely, completely normal. So I don't know. For me, I like to feel prepared. Pretty much in most things in my life, I work on kind of like an evidence-based, like I'm happy to go and try something new, but I will read up about it first and make sure that I don't feel silly, basically. So, and I wonder if lots of women feel like this. So perhaps when they come with each other, rather than rolling in a mixed class, knowing some kind of like, hip escapes, forward rolls, some defensive positions, close guard, mount positions or whichever, before they go into the mixed classes would probably make them feel more comfortable, and I think is likely to encourage them to stay in the sport.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe sometimes just throwing them straight in the deep end, some people are fine. Like I trained only with guys, but so the person that got me into jiu-jitsu was my boyfriend. So I didn't start it off my own back. I had an avenue and a safety net of somebody who I know would be able to help me kind of, make me feel safe in whichever, rather than throwing myself in the deep end as well. So I agree in that I don't think it's necessarily that beneficial to train exclusively with women. I think it helps to encourage new people into the sport.
Maybe sort of like the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time training with other women, but then also be very prepared as you move towards the end of white belt and into blue belt to actually get some more training time in with the men.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. Kind of continuing on from that with the women, being a woman who's not only been in the sport for a really long time, actually. How long have you been training for?
Be 11 years now.
Okay, that's quite a fair amount of time. Who's been in the sport for a long time and has obviously seen a lot of other women come into the sport, and kind of does quite a lot for women's jiu-jitsu in the UK full stop. What have you found to be some of the biggest things that would keep women in the sport and biggest things that would put women off of the sport? Because it's definitely hard.
Yeah,
to get
it
on in
is
sport.
hard because it's such a strange, like, unless I think you have a sibling. So my brother and I used to fight like cat and dog when we were younger.
Yeah.
And when I started jiu-jitsu, I was like, oh, same thing, great. And I was super aggressive then. And so it kind of transferred over. Whereas, so I don't know really what brings people to it. I think there's an element of it, like, of self-defense. And it being...
is like the best sport. It's the best thing for a woman to do for self-defense.
Yeah, exactly. Because so if you're being attacked, so a person's not going to stand up and throw punches
track
at you.
and field and learning to run very fast.
Yeah.
The combination of those two
throw
things.
the javelin that you carry around with you. Straight into somebody's heart.
Oh, more the track than the field. But
okay. Hurdling over bodies. I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. You know, someone's not going to stand up with you and go toe to toe and start punching you. They're probably going to grapple you and take you to the ground. So absolutely, I think there's that element to it. But in terms of what gets people interested, I don't know. I think other women in the sport and them seeing them compete and them being successful at something that maybe historically has been is historically a very male-dominated sport. What keeps them? I think people feeling safe where they are keeps them getting some kind of enjoyment out of it. So I think what's quite important. So I teach the beginners, and mostly it's guys. To be honest with you, not many girls come to my class. What I like to do is kind of share some of the techniques, but then also like make them feel that they're actually doing some kind of exercise. So I think one of the most appealing things for jiu-jitsu is that those people who don't just go to the gym to kind of like do weights, and you know, like some people get quite a lot of enjoyment from that, some people don't. They like to do a sport side of it. So women actually feeling like they're getting a bit of a sweat on and they're training their whole body at the same time, a form of exercise as well as like learning the techniques and learning a martial art.
How do you implement that?
What do you mean?
Well, you said like they need to feel like they're having a workout. Is that's just going to come naturally from them rolling, or? Yeah.
So, but if they're like proper fresh newbies, so we get them doing like specific positions. So sometimes we'll just play some games where people just lie next to each other, and then the first person to basically hold the other person down, or we do like shoulder taps, knee taps, or we play some games with it, and they don't really realise how hard they're working.
They're doing some like strength and conditioning drills, basically.
Yeah,
like
basically.
some S&C games.
Yeah, with body weight each other.
Yeah.
And then when they can get to the point where I feel they're kind of safe enough to actually have more of an exchange than lots of specific sparring for like close guard or mount or whichever, and just escaping the position. I think that's kind of, you know, people, I mean, I do like 2 minutes with these guys and they're absolutely burnt out. So
white belts will just go too hard and they'll be tired very, very quickly.
But I think people get into, I don't know, there's something about grappling that people just really, it's very natural, you know, they just absolutely enjoy. And that I don't know, for me personally, that feeling of when you've had a really good training session, like, you know, they say like you could never have a bad run, or you can never have a bad training session. You can have a bad training session.
I've had lots. So
yeah, me too. But when you have those good ones,
you have just so white belts listening, you have more bad sessions the more you go on. When you get to black belt, you get the most bad sessions.
Yeah. And again, it depends on your expectations. So there are days when I come to training and I can feel absolutely full of energy, and I'm like, great, I'm going to smash it today. These are the things I'm going to work on. I'm going to not get my guard pass. I'm going to work on my guard recovery specific, and people will be passing my guard, or I'm just playing on top and I'm getting smashed there, and it makes no sense to me. And the only thing that I can put it down to is that my expectation for that day was much higher because of how I felt. When I'm so tired, and let's say I've done like a strength and conditioning session and a morning drill session, or I've been at work all day and I'm absolutely hanging, like it's been an accumulation of a busy week, and I come to training and my expectation is rubbish. I have the best training session ever, and I'm literally killing it, and I have no idea whether it's just because I'm more relaxed and I'm just not expecting anything and I have a great session, or I don't know.
It's like if you go into a film, you go to watch a film expecting it to be the greatest film of all time, and then it's always going to be a disappointment.
Yeah.
If you expect it to be shit, you'd be like, well, actually, that wasn't half bad.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, same thing applies.
So, you mentioned briefly some of the training that you do. Over the last 11 years, you've gone from white belt to one of the best grapplers this country's ever made.
Woo,
and so, how has your training changed over that time?
I'd say I train a lot less now. So I went through a phase when I first came to London. I was training at London Fight Factory, and we did.
How long ago was this?
That I came to London in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So
not long ago.
No, during that time, so I was in Bristol training with Italo Ferreira initially, and got my blue belt from him. He moved over to teach in Abu Dhabi, and then we had Chico come over. So was training with Chico for a few years, and that was between Bristol and Cheltenham, and then I would go to Denmark to train with the girls quite frequently there for the camps. So then I came to London, literally went to London Fight Factory, and we did a shed load of sparring here to the point where it would get to Wednesday, Thursday, and my body would be in absolute bits.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, everybody's doing this. This is how I need to be training. And I just started to wear myself down, and then mentally really took its toll on me. And I then just had to take a step back and look at how much I'm training, what I'm training, and is this the most efficient way for me to be basically progressing in jiu-jitsu and preparing for competition. So that was quite a steep learning curve for me, and it made me realise that I was overtraining to the point where I can't sleep. So there will be days, and I'm so tired, and might be times when I'm dieting as well, or just eating normally, and I can't sleep at night. I'm not recovering the next day. My body's still sore. Mentally, I'm just weeping, crying in the corner. I remember a few times where I was just crying whilst rolling with somebody and choking them from the back and just being like, "I'm sorry."
Really?
Yeah.
That bad?
Just emotional. So emotional. And then I was like, Sam, stop. Take a look at what's going on here. Is this really, in terms of quality of life, are you enjoying how much that you're training right now? Probably not. But then it's balancing between what your goals are and how you need to get there. And okay, maybe you do need to go through some tough times. I understand that. And then just basically looked at it and thought, okay, look, this is my training at the moment. We're doing lots and lots of it. Not a lot of strength and conditioning so my strength and conditioning stuff, I don't do a lot of conditioning. I do a lot of rowing now, but
okay.
I spar, mainly it's my sparring and then strength work, but that would go through phases. So it's not ever really been that consistent.
You'd do a block of strength training and then you take months off. And then,
and I don't really know how beneficial that is, but
not very.
No, okay. No. I go through phases with it, and
it would be more beneficial than doing nothing, but less beneficial than training.
Yeah, consistently. Yeah. So I just took a step back. I took out most of the sparring, and now what I do is, so not most of the sparring, but because I was sparring twice a day hard.
Okay.
And it was too much for my body to cope with.
Yeah.
And I could only tell that by my mental state, really. And like I said to you before, in terms of with struggling, kind of the mental side of things, it was only detrimental to me to break myself down so low to then go and compete feeling that rubbish, basically. So now I do with, now Brad's also in London, a lot of training and drilling with Brad. It's pretty much him that we go through new stuff, and he'll kind of advise on things that I should be working on and stuff, really. And areas that I say to him, I'm getting a little bit stuck here, and we go through some drills and stuff. And then we do the sparring kind of in the evening. But if there are days when my body is no, not today, then I don't train. And it's knowing the difference between being lazy and knowing when your body and your mind need to take a rest.
That just comes from experience most of the time.
Absolutely, yeah. And depending on which personality is present at the time.
Okay, you've mentioned it 3 times now. Your theory is that you have multiple personalities?
Yeah, I think so. This is obviously clearly self-diagnosed from Dr. Cook over here.
Okay.
But I wrote something down the other day which just made me, after having a bit of a bad spell, so I have I feel quite bad spells. Obviously, it's not, everybody experiences different things in life, of depression, which can last 1 week or 2 weeks. So not 6 months or, however long, maybe I don't know, typical depression can last for. But it's quite severe, and it's quite sabotaging to my life at those points. So I feel like, even though I competed a lot last year, I had to really push through these periods that were making me feel pretty rubbish. And I actually think that some of the times when I've not performed to my best are due to those periods.
Yeah.
So
you've been competing during that period.
Yeah. It's been forced basically to get the ranking for the UAE, and fighting all the Grand Slams and traveling all the different places to kind of put myself in the best position possible for basically the World Pro and the World Championships. So it's made me have to go, come on, Sam, as much as you feel really rubbish right now, go. You need to sort this out. You have to do something. Because I thought maybe pushing through it was the best option. Now, I still don't know what the best option is, but it's really just completely self-sabotaging. And I become a completely different person to what I am normally. So the person that you're sat with now, who's very sociable, happy, generally, easily pleased in life, simple things, socializing, talking to people, no problem. You could ask me right now to go and deliver a presentation to I don't know, 1,000 people on a topic that I'm familiar with, and I'll do it in the drop of a hat. You catch me in that week or those 2 weeks, and I won't answer my phone, won't talk to anybody, will barely leave the house. My diet completely goes out the window. I become a very low, negative person who completely self-sabotages herself, and literally so polar opposite to the person that I am now.
And you never guess that as well.
And I what?
You never guess it.
No, that's what I mean. Everybody always sees the smiling person who's happy behind the camera. You know, social media creates this whole facade. And I'm not saying, I think lots of people probably have this in their lives. And we're coming to the point where mental health is a much more open topic that we discuss. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like I listen to a lot of like audiobooks or like read stuff online. And I was listening recently to David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. So I listened to it as an audiobook because then he also pitches in every now and then to narrate it. And this guy's obviously been through a really rough time. I get it. And his kind of view on life is like, you just have to push through. You just have to, you know, get through it. But that's so hard to do when you're in like what I call the hole. So like I've talked to my mum quite frequently about this, and obviously Brad and stuff, and she'll be like, you know, how's things going, what's going on? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm in the hole right now. Like there's a cloud over my head. I think I'm in it. And she's like, okay, well, what are you trying to do to manage it? And I was like, well, I'm still training. I'm keeping my diet relatively clean, and I try to be proactive with it. But it's that negative kind of, me and my mind become two separate people, and my mind will completely try to just destroy me and give me like anxiety, and this person's judging you and this is happening, and I'm like, we're part of the same being. Why are we not on the same page? Why do our minds like turn against us and tell us that we're not worthy, we're not capable, you know, we're a fraud, we've got imposter syndrome, just to really, really break me down to get to the point where, so I know I really like going into my whole history.
No, go for it.
I
think like it's important to talk about these sort of things because
maybe other people are also experiencing.
100% other people are, and I know for a fact that other people are because I've spoken to other people who are going through like the exact same thing. But if nobody speaks about it because they feel like they're the only one going through it, then everyone feels like they're the only one. Yeah. But the reality is like maybe half the population or something. Exactly. You know, it can be a lot of people really do. So I think it is important that actually, and also the fact that you can go through you can be in the hole whilst competing, whilst training, and actually still be really successful at what you're doing.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's your mind telling you that, well, it was just lucky. It was just a fluke. And it doesn't help. That's what I found, which was kind of obviously like a disappointment in that I couldn't push through it. And, you know, because I also really suffer with quite bad fatigue. So I went to the doctor. I've been to the doctor a couple of times. The first time I said, am I bipolar? Because I'm literally the happiest person on the earth who sees everything from a positive point of view. And then for 1, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how severe it is, or sometimes it's a couple of days, sometimes it doesn't happen at all. Yeah. What happens to me? I literally go from here to here, and I have no explanation. And they were like, you're not bipolar because it's not 6 months of mania and 6 months of, you know, you're not like gambling and having sex with loads of people and spending all your money and then, you know, being like severely depressed. I was like, no, it's not really that extreme. It's more that I feel like life stops for me during those 2 weeks because I'm really bad at like, I procrastinate, like, and if I allow it, so let's say, you know, if I don't have to go and teach on the evening or I don't have to go to work the next day, then I won't go. And there are some days where I'll sleep for 48 hours. Wow. 2 whole days. And sometimes I'll wake up and it's gone and I'm fine. And then some days I wake up and I'm still in the hole and I can't explain it. And then one day, so let's say because I thought it was all linked to my diet, this tiredness and fatigue that I was getting, like maybe I've really messed up. I think I have pretty much messed up my metabolism from years of dieting and yo-yo dieting. Yeah. And I thought, well, sometimes I feel this rubbish when I'm cutting weight and my carbs are pretty low and maybe it's linked to that. So I'll increase my carbohydrate intake. I'll eat, you know, I'll have like snacks and chocolate and fruit and normal things and I still feel rubbish and it makes no sense to me. So I'll have like, I feel like it was like narcolepsy. I would sit at a computer desk or I sat on the train and I'm asleep in seconds. Oh, this isn't. I'm going into a deep sleep, like literally sat on the train, and I'll like pass out and then wake up, carry on, and then wherever I sit down, I'm gone again. And that always happens during that time where my mood is low. So I went to the doctor and explained and said to her, like, look, I've been battling this for as long as I can remember now, like literally from the beginning. And I think maybe I just didn't acknowledge it.
You know, since you were a kid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember like after school times, and I thought maybe I burnt myself out. So I had horses when I was younger and it's pretty full on. I had 2 horses, so it was before school, after school, every day. And I was like, maybe I did too much and burnt myself out and then became sleepy. But even then we'd go to shows on the weekend and I would compete in show jumping and then I'm asleep in the lorry on the way home or asleep on the way there. And I thought, oh, actually, this has been present for a really long time. So she said to me, is your fatigue and tiredness linked to a low mood? And I was like, yeah, pretty much. Like it's almost like clockwork. And I said, is it some kind of weird hormonal response? Like, could it be linked to some form like contraception, or am I kind of messing my cycle up here? And she said it's very common. It just seems like you're having cycles of depression in those times. And I was like, but how can I manage this? Because at the moment, it's not that bad, don't get me wrong. And she said to me, like, have you ever had like suicidal thoughts, or, the standard question? And I said, no, it's not like I would ever consider, ending my own life. But I can see why, if somebody has this that I feel for a short period of time, for an extended period of time, why they might feel like they don't want to be
life is hopeless.
Anymore. Yeah. Because it's impossible, it's not rational. I can understand it if, like, even if it was linked to competition. I went to, like, the Worlds and I trained so hard and I gave everything and I lost. I still don't get depressed by it. I'm like, do you know what? I gave it the best shot I could. I've had an amazing time. It's not just about competing, do you know what I mean? I've learned so much about myself. Like, I don't know if you read that. I put quite, like, a long post up on Instagram recently after I lost the Grand Slam to Tamara in the final. And I was like, do you know what? It's not about me losing to her. It's not about me comparing myself to her or anybody else here. And it's not about gold medals. I mean, they go straight in the box. Like, do you know what I mean? And the next competition, nobody even cares. Do you know what I mean? Oh, great. You won the Europeans. The Pan Am's is next week. Like, there's a new champion. There's something else going on. So people don't really care, which is fine by me. And that's, also think why I started to do so much better, taking that pressure off and just going, competing and enjoying the whole experience. So I could understand it if there was something that happened to me or something that was going on in my life that, that people go through really, tough times and hardships, and maybe they have a reason to feel pretty rubbish right now, but it's not rational and it's not logical and I can't control it. So I'm in this vicious circle of, I come out of it, I forget about it because it's like, well, I feel great now. I feel fine. I'm super proud. I can be so regimented. Like, I'm complete polar opposite. One end of me is like, let's say, I have my training schedule, no matter how tired I am or what's going on, as long as I know mentally I'm strong, I will go. I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? I can push through the dieting and like being regimented. So people will be like, oh, you can have like, just a little bit. No, it's not for me. My focus is so strong. And then when this hole comes, then I'm literally the complete opposite person, where everything that, that means looking after myself or a healthy lifestyle or, I don't know, being productive and just getting on with like my day to day just completely goes out the window. And I don't know if being more aware of mental health issues, like you said, like we are much more aware of it, is a good thing or a bad thing. Because am I now acknowledging that this is here, and are we getting to the point where, so I don't know if it's Scandinavia or I think somewhere within Europe, they're having now, rather than just sick days from work where you're physically unwell, you have mental health days. So if you're mentally not feeling right.
Sounds Scandinavian to me.
Yeah. If you're mentally not in a good place, you can take that as a day off of work. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if this is a good thing. Initially, I thought this is really good, because those 2 days that I feel like I need to sleep for 2 days and physically can't do anything, then maybe I could take this as a mental health day. But then part of me is like, well, if we acknowledge this as something, are we then going down this route of, okay, we're suffering with mental health issues, this, not an excuse, but this kind of gives us a reason to, stop things or stop carrying on. Would it not be better practice to be like, I'm acknowledging it, I'm going to set less tasks for this week, being aware that, this is going on or whatever, and try to manage my days differently, rather than saying, I can take a day off completely. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it's such a hard one with mental health, because it's so... one, it's so invisible. Yeah. And two, it's so individual. In the same way, like if you said, saying that I have like a mental health issue, it's the same thing like saying like I have an injury. Yeah. Right? Well, that's like, what do you mean? Is your arm hurt? Is your leg hurt? Are you paralyzed? It can be so varied. And I think it's the same with mental health. So, how you deal with that when you're in that place is going to be different for every individual person. I think the real question is, why are people feeling like this? Like, is mental health issues becoming more prevalent in today's society, or are we just talking about it more? And it's actually existed since the dawn of time, and we're just speaking about it, so we're acknowledging it, and therefore it seems like it's a lot more prevalent. Or is there something inherently wrong in our society which is causing people to feel the way that they're feeling these days, whether that's diet, whether that's, it depends how far into conspiracy theories you want to go, whether that's fluoride in the drinking water, whether that's it's internet, whether that's 3G signals interfering with your Wi-Fi, interfering with your brain, whether that's social media giving women a terrible image of what they need to look like, everything. I don't know what the cause is.
No.
I think that's a much deeper question. But I think, it is an important thing to talk about. What you do with the information that it's out is then going to be the next question. Is it better to just give people time, or is it better to actually kind of, okay, well, let's work on strategies to kind of fix that? I don't know. And I think the other thing is that people need to be, it's so difficult for people who don't suffer from things like depression to understand it. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
If you tell a lot of people, because there'll be people listening to this who have suffered from depression, and when you're talking about it, they're like, 100% I get that. I understand every single thing you're saying. Because even though I've never suffered with any mental health issues, thankfully, I know a lot of people who have, and I've been in relationships with people who have, and then you kind of, after a while, you start to understand it. You're almost living it a little bit through them. So you understand it a lot more than what you would have before you'd kind of spent time with these people. So there'll be a lot of people who are thinking, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. A lot of people going, what do you mean? And then you'll be like, oh, I feel bad today. And you're like, come on, just pull yourself out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, come training. You're like, oh, I just need to sleep for 24 hours. Oh, don't be lazy and stuff
exactly.
like that. I think that's the main thing. That's the worst thing that you can kind of say to someone in that position.
Because I've never, I feel like age for me has played a big part in this. So I as much as I was probably sleeping a lot and quite tired, but I was also doing a lot. I've always done a lot with my life, and I think I've always attributed to that. Whereas, again, similar thing. I know people who have suffered with depression, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just tired all the time, and I don't want to do this." And I'm like, "What's wrong with you? You need to look after yourself. You had to take yourself up and out of this situation. It's so hard to do that when you're in it, and it's you versus your mind who's telling you that you're like worthless and you don't bother getting up today. What's the point? But for me is the fatigue, so the tiredness, and that's what. So when Brad and I went to Tokyo last year, it's such an amazing trip. I had a bit of a rough time, so this is the part of it. I have to plan my life around it, and I think that's when it becomes something that, if it starts affecting what you're doing, how you live your life, and affecting the things that you want to do, that's when maybe you need to look at different ways of managing it if the way that you're managing it at the moment isn't working. So when we went to Tokyo, and I have a prolapse disc in my back, only small, but sometimes it flares up if I play too much inverted guard. I'm aware of it. I just squash it back in with some extensions. And for some reason, sometimes it kind of just flares up. I think it was sitting on the plane probably from Tokyo. But I was also in that week suffering with really bad fatigue, and I'm like, we're in Tokyo. I just need not this to ruin our trip. And it was such an amazing trip, but I had to pretty much nap every afternoon. I had to go and just lie down, and I just pass out, and I get up, and then we carry on. And that's the only. It's like pacing yourself, and it's nuts because Brad's just like, why don't we just keep going? What's the problem here? And I was like, I have to sit down, and to the point where. Such a strange feeling of sitting up is making you feel really tired. So this is when it's it's most extreme. That just sitting in the chair here now for a period of time, I would be literally my old boss at King's used to say it, hanging off my ligaments, where I would just be because it was so effortful just to sit up, and I'm like, it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. That's not normal. Yeah. But then the next week it can be completely gone, and I'll have the most energy in the world. I could be severely dieting, let's say. Maybe I've just been overeating for a short period of time. This is another thing that is also kind of preventing me from doing certain things. So what's also linked to my spells of depression is binge eating. So which again, really, really common. Yeah.
People comfort eat is one of the most common things.
But for me, it's really hard to admit that. And I think that's also because of being an athlete in sport, and as a byproduct of being successful and being popular, being a role model for people. And then for me to kind of open up and say, actually, I struggle with a lot of things, including this, is having a real issue with food. I've always had a massive issue with food. And because when I was younger, I was always the bigger person in the class, even though I wasn't big. I look back at photos of me now, and I was lean and skinny, but still heavier than everybody else in my class because I wasn't.
You've got quite an athletic physique. But you're not big.
No, exactly. And I'm really proud of being an athletic person, now or during this week. But again, being compared to people in school, and particular girls who were just all naturally very much smaller than me, or even if there was one bigger girl, but she was confident in her body, didn't even take much notice of that. And I was like, yeah, but she's really confident. She doesn't have an issue. Yeah. Whereas I'm like, why are my wrists not half the size like this person's over here? And then I would always be doing a lot. So like I said, I had horses. I was always interested in sport. I did judo when I was a kid, like super aggressive in judo and training. And again, only ever trained with guys. When I went to compete with girls, completely lost all my aggression and lay flat on the floor like a dead fish. So then kind of played like some team sports, like was always interested in football, like played basketball for a short period of time, realised I wasn't much of a team player, but always like doing something, always active. And then had horses, so was burning energy like it was going out of fashion.
Yeah.
So would eat a lot. And had, I've still now got a really kind of sweet tooth. And there would be times where I'd eat loads, but it would make no difference to me. I was a kid or whichever. And then you get to that age, I'd say about 25.
Yep. Yeah, I got
where
there.
you wake up in the morning in pain
and
you can't eat everything that you want to eat anymore. You have to moderate it. And again, being completely polarised with dieting. So I used to work with Mike Lang for my nutrition stuff. And he was great. And he was like, Sam, it's pretty simple. Like, your energy expenditure has to be more than the food that you intake, basically. There's not really that much science behind it. But for me, it was about being accountable to somebody. It wasn't necessarily having somebody to tell me what to eat or how many macros I need to eat in the day. It's for me to say, this is my weight this week. And he's like, okay, this is what we're going to tweak. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the whole like accountability mirror. Whereas actually, in terms of that being sustainable, you have to be the person who is accountable for yourself.
You can't really rely on someone.
No, because they'll always go. Do you know what I mean? They're never always going to be there. So if you can ingrain that you become the most accountable person for all of your actions and things, then it's obviously going to be much more sustainable. So I can cut the weight. I can restrict my calories to like 800 calories a day and train twice a day for like a couple of weeks. Completely unsustainable. Not recommended to anybody.
Yeah.
I am not a nutritionist. Don't do that. It will mess up your metabolism, something terrible, and you'll develop a bad relationship with food. So I would cut weight for competitions. So one extreme example of this is World's No-Gi. Brown belt in 2015. I was fighting in medium heavy, which was 71 kilos, and Chico was over in LA with me, and he was like, have you considered dropping to middleweight, 66.5, because Jessica Oliveira's in it medium heavy, and she's a big girl, and she's cut down to get there. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. At this point, I was walking around at 71 kilos, and the competition was like a week away or something. So,
wait, and you had to cut down to what?
66.5. So I had to lose 6 kilos in a week. And I did it, and this was through, like, yeah, exactly.
How?
So this was through a water load.
Okay.
So the first time that I've ever water loaded, and
it's a horrible idea.
With distilled water also.
This is literally like a deadly idea.
Yeah, really like extreme. And
you can kill yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then come the end of the week, just did a small bath, made the weight, smashed my 2 fights, and became a world champion. However, because it's water weight, then when I had such bad body dysmorphia because I was so skinny, so skinny. And then in 2 days, I was back up to like 70 kilos, 71 kilos, easily. And I was like, oh my God, this gave me such a horrible, horrible feeling. And it clearly really messed with my hormones, like for, I'd say, months after this competition.
Really?
So I had a really bad spell. I just became a world champion and I was lower than I could ever be. Because I also had the expectation that becoming a world champion would change my life. Yeah. I was still coming back to the gym and getting beat up by our juvenile blue belts. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Nothing really changes. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I know it is an incredible thing and I'm not taking anything away from it, but nothing really changes in terms of like, was kind of expecting when becoming a world champion to absolutely change my life.
This is like this was brown belt world champion, right?
Yeah.
This is like one of your first.
The first time I'd ever done World's No-Gi.
Yeah.
Obviously cut a lot of weight in a short period of time. I mean, it didn't really take its toll on me in the week, and I felt really confident going in. But afterwards, it was such a hard time, a really hard time. And again, I think from that expectation of, oh, I've just won Worlds, like people are going to be sponsoring me and, sending me free stuff and I'm going to be getting paid and everything's going to be so different. Yeah, no, it was completely the same. And I really struggled with that. But also, I think with the water load and the water cut just made me want to be that person. And then to completely change in the next few days and be what I felt like a whole different person. I felt huge. And I was like, oh my God, what on earth has happened here? Like, I've gone from this really skinny, beautiful person and feeling amazing. And I generally have this really weird, warped perception that people who are much lighter and skinnier, or even like very athletic women, have everything figured out in life, and this is probably social media and everything that we're exposed to, in that this girl that's got abs, like, she looks so happy. It's like, people have other issues going going on, and not even anything that's, linked to being skinny. But for me, if I could be that person right there at 66 kilos who just won the world championship, then my life would be set. No, Sam, it doesn't really work like this. Like, do you know what I mean? How can you base your happiness on a weight? It makes no sense. And I know that loads of women, I read loads of articles and forums and like blogs of women who are struggling with their weight and stuff. So this is such a common theme. But this was like literally right down in the hole. And yeah, a horrible experience. And then what happens is, like, because it's such a bad way for you to lose that weight, you regain the water, but then you put on double, like, way much more weight as well, because your body's just never really satisfied with what you're eating, that you can't be regimented. Your kind of whole cycle of like feeling hungry in the morning and lunchtime and evening just completely goes out the window.
Is that from doing 1 week cut?
Yeah, that was bad. Yeah, 1 week. So, I mean, I was diet like.
So you're saying from doing a 1 week cut, your body
rebounded.
Really?
Yeah, horribly.
It went like,
I vowed.
We almost just died. We need to get some supplies
exactly.
in.
And it's just I'm all over the place, and I'm unsettled, and like, again, just negative, and I'm like, should be really happy. I've just won a world championship. Like,
and then you feel guilty about not being happy that you've won worlds. Yeah.
And it's just a vicious cycle.
I had this conversation with Bradley actually
really?
on the last podcast, which I always get like I don't get depression, but I always feel lowest after a fight.
After winning?
Yeah, after winning a massive fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
The bigger it is, the worse you feel after.
Yeah, because again,
it's weird, isn't it?
This same expectation of like, I've just absolutely smashed. Whereas if I go and I fight my heart out, but I lose, I'm smiling. I'm happy. Do you know what? That person today was better than me. Doesn't mean that she's better than me overall. It just means today she'd fought a smarter game than what I did. But if I go and I win, what do I do? What do I do now? Do you know what I mean? I don't change anything. Like, the same thing probably happened with Tamara. So I beat her in 2 weeks before in Spain. I didn't change the game to fight her in the Grand Slam because I just beat her. She did. Yeah. And she beat me with the same game. This was what was nuts. So I played inverted from 50-50 to inverted close guard, attack the toe hold. Again, she couldn't get out of the guard. She's got feet like rubber. She didn't want to tap to this toe hold. But I got the advantage at the end. So we were 2-2. Plus my advantage. In the Grand Slam, inverted close guard from 50-50. I've never seen her play it before in my life. She tapped my foot. Game. She snapped my foot.
Really?
I was like, what just happened? You wouldn't know this move if I didn't show you. But anyway, regardless. But that was a bad one. So I've just come out of what I would say the hole recently. I feel like it was kind of a little bit more rational because I'd lost the Grand Slam in London. And I had quite a lot of pressure leading up to that in terms of people coming to ask for me interviews. Like, Flow Grappling guys are usually pretty good. They always have a catch up with me. But like Abu Dhabi TV were coming over. They did filming in the gym. Like, they wanted to have an interview with Marco, talk about stuff. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm not equipped to manage this. I'm not a manager. I'm just an athlete. And I'm not saying that like I need a manager now because I have all this media and stuff. But it was really hard for me to contend with that.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm still working as well. I still work a part-time job. So trying to manage that. They're calling me whilst I'm at work. We need to do an interview with you tomorrow today. And they're pretty hassling. Do you know what I mean? And I, again, probably just need to be a little bit more blunt. Like, don't call me at work. I'm busy. I'll arrange a time with you later and call up. But I have to deal with it. And I'm like, I don't want to. I just want to train. I want to train and focus on my competition and get on with it. So that built it up for me. They're like, you're in your hometown, Sam. Wow, how's it feeling? You can compete in front of everybody you know. Oh, thanks for that. Thanks for making this feel way more stressful than what it originally was. And I struggled with it and I didn't cope with it. Again, it's coming down to that whole pool table and I can't pot the black. Now there's money on the table. Can't pot it. Like, don't put this pressure on me. So I have to take this pressure off. And
do you find that you operate worse under pressure then?
Yeah, absolutely. I love being the underdog. And so at brown belt, this is why I loved brown belt. Brown belt, going and fight the brown belt divisions, I was absolutely tearing through it. I had nothing to lose. Go for it. Amazing. Now people are like, oh, Sam Cook's in the division. And that's great. Isn't it weird how that's what you want? Like, I went through a phase where I was like, why are Flow Grappling not coming to me for, why am I not favourite? I just won the Europeans 4 years in a row where they've not even mentioned me, blah, 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 whatever. Then when it comes around, guys, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the problem that you get is it's always better to be the underdog because when you're the underdog, there is no pressure. It's something that you don't even if you're very good at dealing with the pressure, it still takes an aspect of your consciousness and your energy and it takes awareness for you to deal with that pressure. When the pressure doesn't exist, there's nothing to deal with. So you can focus all of that energy that you would be used on dealing with the pressure, on dealing with what you need to do.
Yeah.
The problem is, the better you do, the less you're the underdog.
Yeah.
Where it gets to the point where I remember the first competition that I fought where someone said, and they actually said wrongly, it's incredibly ignorant of them. They're like, you should smash this. And I thought, I'm not going to smash this. Yeah. I'm going to get fucked up. because the guys I'm going against are much better than me. Now I did end up winning, which only made it worse, right?
Yeah.
Because now that guy next time, fucking told you smash it.
Yeah.
You know, the next one I go to, you're going to smash that even worse. So you get to the point now where you will not be an underdog in many matches, and you know, there's a chance that everyone gets to a point. The most elite grapplers get to a point where they'll never be an underdog again, realistically.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be, you're going to have to come across someone very, very good to become an underdog. So have you done anything to deal with that?
Personally, it's to do with my training camp, usually up to the competitions. So, and it also depends on, back around again, which personality is there. So at the moment, coming up to Abu Dhabi, I'm in a really good mental place in that I'm training hard. I feel like I'm connecting things, like I'm learning a couple of new techniques now to go to it, but I'm still having fun in training. So I can't be the person who is like, come to training, doesn't really speak to anybody, smash it, kill it, walk away, or do my drills or whichever. I'm still living day to day. I'm taking one day at a time and enjoying what I'm doing in that day. And also, I don't know, with the whole like me saying I'm gonna like retire after like Worlds, I mean, what I'd really like is to be invited to ADCC as the first Brit to ever win a match in ADCC.
You're all right.
I would like.
You're all right. I tried.
But do you know what I mean? I should have been in the final. I'm trying not to come across bitter, like I'm not at all. But I did take Talita Nogueira down, and it went out of bounds. But the rules are, it stays out, it's down. She's on her butt. I've got her two legs. They stop us. They restart us in the middle. Nothing. Yeah. I was like, either you put me back in the same position where I've just taken her down and I finished the takedown here, or you give me the 2 points for it. And they didn't, and then gave the decision to her.
It was a decision.
Yeah. So it should have been me and Gabby Garcia in the final. So I think I deserve a shot.
Isn't there a part of you that goes, no, I'm glad we're...
No, absolutely not. As much as...
I wouldn't want to fight Gabby Garcia.
Yeah. But, I'd give it a crack. Again,
yeah, of course,
I'm the
of
underdog there. It's okay.
Yeah.
As long as I don't break anything, it's
I think
all
you'll
right.
always be an underdog against Gabby Garcia.
But for me to say... So the reason I would like an invite is because I can't fight the trials this year because I'm in Abu Dhabi competing for the World Pro. Anyway, aside from that.
It's the same as Fionn.
Yeah, exactly. She should absolutely get invited.
Insane.
Yeah, absolutely get invited. Yeah. I think they will. I think they'll wait till after the European trials have gone.
Yeah.
But they cannot. They can't ignore her. Do you know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure they'll get her on board.
Well, you were in over 66.
Over 60.
Over 60.
Yeah, it's 60 above and below.
Fuck.
Which is also a bit nuts. They really. I feel like now, if they've got a big enough categories,
and they only do 8 women divisions, don't they?
Is it only 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how you would be. That's how you'd be in the final in two fights, right?
Okay, yeah. I presume if they do it the same this year. I don't know, because I beat
Fenla
in the final in Poland, and then they invited her after. But I think it's because they were lacking some people, whereas now it's a lot more popular. And I think more trials, women have fought, people like Karina Santi, like Amanda, I can't remember her name. Anyway, so I think they'll have a lot more women. So who knows? But it would be really nice. And then if not... like I said, I feel like it's a control thing. It's for me saying, I'm probably going to take a step back from competing. I go back to full-time working in June. I'm really looking forward to my
you
job.
Are doing that?
Yeah, so I've just got a job at Bart's Health.
So you've mentioned it a few times now. So for those who don't know, even though it may seem that you are a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete, you are not a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete. No. You are a qualified physiotherapist, and you've been doing that for...
I qualified in 2008. I took a year off when I went training full-time from 2015.
Well, you've been like sporadically between full-time, part-time, time off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make it work for me. And again, back to mentally, that fits much better in my head. So for me I actually think it's, I don't know, people talk about like the jiu-jitsu dream and being full-time, and how sort of like, how dedicated you are or how difficult it is like to, to fully put everything into jiu-jitsu. I actually think that it's more what's the word? Not like
impressive.
More impressive
to work full time,
or people that juggle it. Some people have got kids and compete, and some people work full time or part time, and they do. It's to me, jiu-jitsu is a smart person's game. Yes, you do have to be athletic and you have to be fit, but if you train efficiently and you take responsibility for your learning, you can learn whilst working full-time and train part-time the same as you can train in full-time,
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily need to be training full time. And when I was, it was too much for me. Like it wasn't sustainable. That, you know, there would be like weeks, like I said, where I'd be sparring like twice a day. And by the time I got to Wednesday, Thursday, I'd be broken. I'm like, well, I could take a day off and actually work on these days. I could be doing something else with my time, which mentally for me fits a lot better. When I went to the Worlds for the first time ever at Purple Belt, I lost my first fight. And I was training full time and it was really full on and it was catastrophic. I was like, I've given up my life for this. I'm clearly not that good at it. I didn't become a world champion. Like my expectation was completely different. And again, I feel like that kind of response in terms of feeling pretty rubbish after that is rational.
That's fine.
Yeah. So had a bit of a rough time and, you know, talked to a few people about it. And I was like, for me, as a person, I need to not have all my eggs in one basket. They need to be in a few baskets, you know? So I have other things in my life that are going on that I can focus on. And don't get me wrong, I love jiu-jitsu in terms of I do enjoy teaching people, but it's not really my passion. I'm in it for selfish reasons only. I love competing.
Okay.
I love competing and traveling most of the time. And I do it because I want to win. Do you know what I mean? And as much as I am part of a team, and you can't basically win the competition unless you have people to train with and you have a team behind you. Yep. In real honesty, it's about what I want to get from the sport. Whereas so for Bradley, it takes a lot from coaching. He generally really enjoys people progressing and learning, and he takes so much, because he helps me so much with competition and training when we go to compete, and if I do well, he's so happy. It's almost like he's won, you know? I don't have that same feeling when someone else competes.
That's fair enough.
You know, when Brad competes, I want him to do well. Like, it's incredible, it's amazing, but I've not contributed to his journey there really quite the same. Whereas even if, you know, with some of the students that I teach, if they go and compete, you know, I would enjoy watching it, but again, I don't get as much from it. So, where was I going with this? So with my job, so I work in critical care. So I like to work with the sickest of sickest patients because I feel that's the area where I can help them the most. And I get so much from that. And it's that gives me my self-worth and my self-esteem. And I very much my life, again, depending on which personality is there, is very regimented in that I like evidence-based and I like, you know, the logical pathways for things, and I like to be in control of it, which is why physiotherapy, as much as it's also down to your clinical experience and, you know, of different areas and different patients, a lot of it is based on research, clinical trials, you know, evidence-based practice. Whereas jiu-jitsu is, I generally feel, probably a lot more for the creative mind. Most of the techniques that I know have been developed from other people and brought together. It's never something that I've sat there and explored myself and been like, what happens if we go here? Or what happens if we do this? Other people who are very creative are, I think, more able to do this than what I am.
You don't consider yourself particularly creative?
I don't think so, no.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Some people are really logical and some people are creative.
Yeah. I think Bradley's the creative one. So I think this is where we kind of balance a little bit. I'm much more like this. This is, you know, makes sense to me, it's logical. He's more like, well, you know, let's think outside the box, and how about with this options or going here? And I'm like, that's not what we've talked about. Do you know what I mean? So we have those opposite sides. So for me, having jiu-jitsu and work balances really nicely in my head. And I don't think it's, sometimes you can kind of see it as more like a bit of a get out clause, I think, in that, well, if one's not going well, then you've still got the other. But that also helps with my mental state, and I'm happy with that. And I'm happy to say that I like having those two things, and I like having, if, you know, one thing isn't going so well, I'm still investing in something else in my life too. Works well for me. Yeah.
Well, it just means that you're not identifying yourself as a grappler purely, which I think some people do, and for some people that's great. They want to have that bound to them, and they want to identify as a pure jiu-jitsu person, and then that's absolutely fine. And those people tend to be very successful at what they want to do if they have all the other attributes that add up to it, but it's not for everyone. I remember I spoke to you before you went back to work one time. I can't remember when it was, but it was a while ago. And it was like the money issue as well. Like that lifestyle of a full-time grappler, very often not particularly lucrative one.
No.
And some people are okay with doing that. Some people are willing to sacrifice having nice things or going on holiday or, you know, doing whatever they want to do as one of the many sacrifices that you have to make to be the best of the world. But other people are not so willing to do that.
Yeah. And for me, it wasn't. So I've done my like sleeping on gym floors,
Yeah.
and when I was telling you about my Crystal Palace story earlier, I was sleeping on the gym floor in LFF.
I could be very nice to you and not make you tell that. Yeah.
And I've done that, you know,
Yeah.
I've kind of roughed it, and we've stayed in really rubbish places, which have probably been a bit dodgy and stuff and whichever. And, you know, but now I've gotten to that point where I'm like, do you know what? I don't buy a lot of things. I don't own a lot of things. Living in London is expensive on its own. But in terms of like, you know, I'm not really one for like fashion or anything like this. But like, you know, I like to look nice, but it's not a super priority to me.
Yeah.
So now I feel like a lot of my funding does go on. If we're going to go on a trip, I want to stay in a nice hotel.
Yeah.
I want to have a nice bed to sleep in. You know,
Well,
that's really
you do
important
travel
to
quite
me.
a lot by the sounds of it, because you have to self-fund yourself to all of these tournaments, don't you?
Yeah.
So you're like Rio, Japan, various European cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it. And I don't want to rough it anymore. That's
Yeah.
not for me. And, you know, that's fair enough, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I
But,
agree.
you know, I don't have a car. I don't have, like, you know, obviously, like, my expenses in terms of rent and bills and things like that are quite expensive in London. But I cycle everywhere pretty much. So, and I think, yeah, I don't know. I just don't, I've never been materialistic. It's always been more for me about creating the memories. I'd rather save up the money and go somewhere and have a week full of memories than I would, you know, just and own something. But that's because I've had to also choose between that. If I
Sure.
had the money for both, then I'm sure I would buy probably, you know, a nice expensive watch or something. But to me, it doesn't really hold that much value.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm more about the life experiences. So like any gifts or anything like this for people, the people that I care about the most, I don't tend to really buy them gifts unless it's like a smaller thing. I'd much rather us go and spend time together doing
Sure.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a nice way to look at it.
My memory's terrible,
Anyway,
though.
there's been many other things that people want to ask you.
Oh, really?
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, which I did want to talk about, is your womanars.
Oh, yeah.
How long have you been doing this for now?
Woo,
These
when
are
did-
woman seminars, if no one got that from
Womanars,
the name.
yeah.
Womanars.
It was
So-
between
so
like
clever.
seminar and womanar,
Oh.
and I thought, well, seminar, it's not really about me. Do you know
Seminar
what
is
I mean?
seminar is better,
Do you
but it is
think?
making it about you.
The other one was like feminar, and I thought it sounded like a feminine hygiene product. So I thought, let's go with womanar.
Feminar sounds like something that you'd use the mask as smell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Femme fresh.
So
Please
your
come to the
womanars-
Feminar for your freshen up products. Maybe I'll get them to sponsor one. Who
A
knows?
seminar is
Seminar.
yeah.
But then I
seminar's
didn't
good.
want to make it about
No,
me.
no, I
do you
get
know what
that. I get that.
I kind of
I think you went with the right choice there.
yeah. So this will be the 10th one now. I can't remember the first year that I started it, but it was at LFF. I think was that the original. Yeah, and I think there were like maybe no more than 10 girls to start with, and
How many did you get now?
the most. So the last one I did in Brighton, which was a little bit quieter, I think a change of venue wasn't the best option, and Fight Zone is also still a much bigger venue. So we had 34 women in the mat in Fight Zone for the previous one. Yeah, that was the biggest one that I've hosted so far. I'm hoping this time to get 50.
Wow.
I think it's possible. It's definitely there.
When is it?
50% of tickets are sold already. May the 12th.
Okay.
And
Where can they find it?
huh?
Where can they find it?
Fight Zone is in for tickets or so on my Instagram page, the link's in my bio.
That's Sam Cook BJJ.
Yeah.
At Sam Cook
At
BJJ.
Samantha Cook.
Oh,
BJJ.
shit. At Samantha Cook BJJ.
Yeah, it's on the Eventbrite on there that you can purchase the tickets. And I've always said that I'll always keep it at £20. It's never with a view of it. It was never with the view of like making loads of money from it and charging loads more money. It was with the view of just it growing, and the more women on the mat, the better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically just a platform for women to come together. I show some of my techniques, and a lot of it's to do with the women integrating with each other and coming from all different areas. And because women like to chat a lot, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, people like to chat a lot, but in particular when you get women
I hate
together.
to hear you stereotyping there.
No,
but
I know.
sure.
we get that one. People like to talk a lot. So yeah, that I feel is one of the most important parts, and we always sit down at the end and we always do a bit of a Q&A. And I think that is also super important when people ask questions like, you know, this person goes a little bit rough with me in class, how should I deal with it? You know, you're still a person. It doesn't matter with hierarchy. If you're a white belt, he's a blue belt, or he's a purple belt and you're a blue belt,
Yeah.
you're still a person. You still have rights to say, hey bud, you're going a little bit rough. If you continue to be a bit rough, I'm probably going to stop training with you today. That's it. You know, I think as women, we do need to set those boundaries in place a lot earlier. And I don't know if this is just a jiu-jitsu thing in training, but we're a little bit passive aggressive on this, and I'm guilty of it also in terms of like
Women or jiu-jitsu or?
I think jiu-jitsu
Okay.
as a whole, yeah. Probably I feel maybe more so the women speak up now because men are notoriously not very good at speaking up anyway.
Sure.
In terms
Stereotyping
of,
again, but that's okay, Sam. We'll allow it.
If you're looking
We'll
at kind
allow
of history in terms of like
It's fine.
bullying or harassment and things like this. Anyway, so I think we kind of like, oh, but he's a higher belt, we can't say anything. You're still a person. If you were in work with, a colleague and they were speaking to you in an inappropriate way, your best way to deal with inappropriate behaviors is to deal with it in a timely manner and immediately, regardless of hierarchy. I've kind of learnt this. So I had a scenario with a consultant. So I was working in critical care. And usually at this particular hospital, we wore our own uniform and everybody else wears scrubs. And I had spilt tea down my uniform, so I was wearing scrubs. So we were talking about a particular spinal patient in terms of like a mode of ventilation for this spinal patient. Now, as physiotherapists, we are involved with like weaning mechanical ventilation of that patient. And we look at very much evidence-based approach, and neuromuscular weakness patients are a higher risk of developing like ventilator associated pneumonias and stuff because they're not breathing for themselves, so the air's not getting right down in the bases. So we usually ventilate patients at 6 to 8 mils per kilo, if that makes sense. Just going off on a physio tangent now.
I'm following just about. For
your neuromuscular weakness patients, we would advocate a higher tidal volume so that we're kind of a little bit hyperinflating the lungs so that we're ensuring that we're getting, chest clearance and air into the bases to prevent like areas collapse and stuff. Now, I had said this to the nurse at the bedside and I was like, look, this is kind of the protocol that we're working towards now. There's a guideline called the Risky Guideline, which is like respiratory something in spinal cord injury. Anyway. And he was like, okay, great. So we'll just tweak up his tidal volumes to achieve this. Yeah, perfect. Then the consultant, who was a bit notorious for being
a douchebag?
Female. Not male. A little bit volatile.
Females can be douchebags as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Had come, so I was in scrubs, naturally. So I think she thought I was a nurse. I was in the next bed space and she absolutely just completely slated me and was like, don't listen to the physio. She's no flipping clue what she's talking about. We're not doing this, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, okay, great. Thanks. Now I'm going to have to approach this. Even though you're a consultant, you pretty much work for yourself. It's not professional to speak to like another member of staff or a colleague about me in such a derogatory tone. You could say, I know the physio has requested you to do this, but I would like to plan to this. That's entirely up to them. And we come to a multidisciplinary team agreement. That's how you do it. But basically just completely slated me. And I was like, oh, bloody hell. People who know me best know that I hate confrontation. Yeah. I'm really bad with confronting people. And, I've gone to like Fight Zone for like, a few things that I wanted to talk to them about. And I just break down and cry, even though it's not a bad situation. It's not negative, like necessarily. It's just like, I think we should be doing this. And I'm just absolutely fall to pieces. Again, depending on how I am mentally. Sometimes I can go in and I'll totally just like, put my point across. It'll be clear, precise, bang, done. Outcome is what I wanted and I leave. Yeah. But otherwise, confrontation I really struggle with. So it is time sensitive to deal with a behavioural issue. So I just was like, oh, hey, such and such, do you mind if I just have a quick word? Yeah, sure. Kind of like flippantly. Off she went. Again, didn't know who I was because I was in scrubs. And had to then introduce myself and say, oh, hello, by the way, I'm Sam. I'm your physiotherapist that works on critical care here. I'm aware that you've just had a discussion with the nurse at the bedside regarding this patient. And I overheard, and I'm upset with the way that you had basically explained how you felt, that I, was not capable of doing my job, blah, 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 whatever. And I don't appreciate that. And in future, if you could come and speak to me if you have any concerns regarding this patient, then we can talk about and discuss it. And she was literally like, taken aback and kind of flippantly, obviously she's a consultant, like, they don't really give a crap about what you think, but flippantly just kind of brushed it off and was like, oh yeah, absolutely, sure, and then walked off. And I was like, great, well done, Sam, pat yourself on the back for dealing with that in such a great way. So the same thing applies in jiu-jitsu. You're in the gym, it's the same as in a commercial gym. If somebody is in there doing something that you don't necessarily agree with or is treating you in a way or something that is affecting you, you have a right to say something about it. It doesn't matter that, they're the owner of the gym or whichever. If it's, behavioural, then you can say something. Like there is a certain amount of hierarchy again within employment, but again it's knowing in terms of like professionalism and in terms of opinion or clinical experience or whatever, fine, then it's still your prerogative to initiate a discussion about that. Absolutely, we should be challenging practice. We should be like, no question is a silly question sort of thing. But anyway, going off on a tangent. So this is kind of what I think it's having those conversations that maybe they might not necessarily want to ask their coach because they're causing a bit of a problem or something, like, this guy's being a bit rough, can you talk to him? Well, actually, no, you can just talk to him and you can say. And that's something that we're not very good at in jiu-jitsu. And maybe as male or female, do you know what I mean? Is in just saying during the role or whichever, you're being a bit too rough for me right now, or I don't like what you're doing, or saying no to a person that you don't want to train with.
Yeah.
Regardless if you're lower belt or not. There's a couple of people, one of our guys in particular, we kind of joke about it a little bit now, but in the beginning he was a little bit too kind of explosive for me. And I was like, I'm generally feel a little bit at risk here in terms of, and I've said to him, I'm not going to train with you. And he obviously took it quite personally. And then a couple of weeks later, he was like, why are you not going to train with me? And I was like, honestly, I think you're too rough. I don't think it's any benefit of me to train with you or for you to train with me. And then we kind of like had a bit of a joke about it. And then since we've rolled, and he's like, we're gonna have a technical roll here. And I was like, great, because we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Do you know what I mean? I'm guilty of wanting to punish people who are being too rough with me.
Yeah.
In particular, guys. And if I think this person is like,
disgusting.
just I'm just being honest.
Disgusting.
Is being too rough, then I will equally be just as rough.
Yeah.
And and that's my ego.
But that's also one of the nicest things in jiu-jitsu, right?
What, that you can beat up the person that's trying to beat you up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, yeah.
That's like, right?
I can't do it to that many people.
I know, but it's so sweet. You just be like, you know what, you're being a dick. Let's do it.
But there are a lot of people, and obviously genetically, men are stronger than women. 30% stronger.
Cannot believe this. The words I'm hearing coming out of your mouth. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
If it's going to be hard for a woman to be able to, it may be hard in a certain situation for her to be able to even use her technique on somebody who's potentially being a bit rough and a bit strong with them.
Yeah.
So then that's when you have a right to say. And this is one of I think the most important things about the woman art. And again, when we're coming back to women only classes, maybe we can catch people early on and say, you have a right still to say something. You don't have to accept this, blah, 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 whatever. I had a girl come to me in my no-gi class, and she had asked she was like, this guy literally picked me up and slammed me. And I was like, okay, that's not actually legal.
Yeah.
And she was like, but what's the etiquette? What can I do about it? And I was like, absolutely, you can say something to him. Like, now that it's illegal, you can use that. But I said, but equally, if somebody's hurting you and it's not necessarily like a normal submission or whichever, you can still tell them. You can still say like, you're actually about to break my ribs here or whichever. I don't know. And just create those boundaries in place rather than feeling really rubbish about it, coming away, going to the change room, having a big moan with everybody. They're like, oh yeah, did you roll with this guy? Yeah, he's really rough. Oh God, and I was like, did anybody tell him? Maybe he doesn't know, know? Maybe he feels like you're going too rough. It's the same the other side. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've had a couple of guys who have escalated to or spoken to a female colleague and said, like, this girl in particular is quite rough with me. And, I felt like not necessarily he had to teach them a lesson or, felt like I had to go rough back because she was being so aggressive. And I was like, well, one of you kind of has to be the bigger person here. Like, either you're still doing it in a controlled manner, or you speak to her and you say, I think you're being a little bit aggressive. Obviously, it's quite difficult, I think, for that conversation to happen. But I do think this is the way that we're going to start to change it in terms of training with each other, rather than us, kind of escalating and being like, well, there's one coach that's looking after, 50 students on the mat. He needs to be watching everybody and telling people off if they're doing things wrong. No, I think that the coach is there to kind of set a precedent and a standard, and how they train and they roll with people is carried over. Do you know what I mean? And kind of like the respect between each other. But we speak up for ourselves. Like, we're responsible for ourselves.
Yeah, I do agree. At the same time, I actually quite like people coming and telling me. I understand if someone can say something to the person that they're rolling with if they have a problem with them, but if they can't, tell your instructor.
Yeah.
I actually especially when it comes
but I think about some of our classes, and if all the people had some problem with something and they all came to Marco, he literally wouldn't have the time of day to
well, maybe if you're not in like one of the biggest academies in the country, but if you're not in one of the biggest, if you're not a fight zone, then but
that's why I think
I always
people
tell
like
my
us
students to come and tell me, because it's easier it is easier for an instructor to keep an eye on an individual and see how this person rolls. Even just like, can you watch him roll with me? I think he's being a bit of a dick. And we're like, and it might just be a case of that I need to roll with him and say, you need to relax.
Yeah.
Like because sometimes it's as simple as that. Like, they have no real control over their output, and someone needs to roll with them and say, you're actually going to be better at jiu-jitsu if you tone it down by about 300%, But
absolutely. And maybe coming from the person that you're rolling with, in particular, if it's a lower belt, they're probably not going to be like, well, what do you know? Do you know what I mean? I understand that. Yeah. But then also, you know, we do have people like me and other black belts and people who've been there for a long time who also can take that on board. Do you know what I mean? Not just as like the main instructor, but when there's such a busy class, I would hope that if the women were having a problem, they could come to me and say, oh, Sam, like, I feel like this guy's being a bit of a douchebag. Yeah. Like, what do you think? And, you know, probably I would have trained with them and had a bit of a gist and an idea as well. But this is kind of just what I reiterate in the webinars.
Yeah.
You know?
So do you find yourself as one of the best grapplers in the country?
Do I find myself?
No, as one of the best grapplers in the country, and especially as one of the top women in the country. In fact, if we say England, you're the best woman in England, right? We'll say that. I say Fion's the best in the UK, but you're the best in England. That you're like an inspiration for many women all across the world, probably. Definitely in Europe, definitely in the UK and in England. You're an inspiration as one of the people who kind of lead in the forefront of women's grappling. Do you feel that responsibility?
Yeah. And isn't that a bit nuts when you think about it? In terms of like with us in a sport, when I'm not running to be a politician or a mayor, I'm not, you know, trying to say that I'm the best person to be an advocate or a role model for this. I'm just competing and becoming more famous by competing. And then as a byproduct of that, somehow I become a role model too.
Yeah, I think it is crazy. But I also, and there are athletes out there, if you look at some high-level athletes that don't carry themselves with the sort of dignity and respect that you would expect from a role model, and a lot of them would turn around and say, well, I don't want to be a fucking role model. I never chose to be a role model. I'm not a role model. Fuck off. Yeah. Don't let your kids watch me. You know? So, which is a reaction that a lot of people have. But at the same time, I think actually, if you want to be an athlete, that's part of the price you pay, is that you are going to be in the spotlight. And if you are in the spotlight, whether you like it or not, actually you may have to set an example, because people have, you know, if you're in the public view, then it may be a chance that you are inspiring people, and if you're inspiring people, you may have to act as a bit of a role model. So don't compete or suck it up and do it properly.
It doesn't have to be just competition though.
No,
you can become
anything.
A legend from like teaching or like
it can be anything
within the sport.
Anything,
but yeah, absolutely. And I generally believe that there's a difference between those people who generally look for those kind of powerful roles and choose that and want to be a leader and want to be listened to, etc. I know a few people who are like this. You know, they want to be respected, and I want to be respected, but respected for what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Not hard to explain that.
Well, you haven't gone searching for power.
No. It's not my choice to kind of tell people how to live their lives or what they should be doing, because...
But that influence has fallen upon you because of what you've managed to achieve.
It's a byproduct, isn't it?
And especially the fact that not only are you a very successful grappler, but you are at the very front of European and especially UK women grapplers. Like, you're the first generation to fight in ADCC and the first generation to win world titles, and you're going to the mundials that we've never had a world champion, mundials world champion adult in any gender. You know, and very, very few in even other belts, but a black belt there's never been any. So you'll be going, and you came second or third last time. So, you know, possibly on the, where did Fiona come? Did she fight what? Was she even a black belt?
She lost the final, I think.
Yeah.
No, did she fight last year?
I don't know. But you're at the forefront of...
She's going to win it this year.
Yeah, probably.
Sure.
Probably. But I got you. I reckon you win it.
That would be nice.
That'd be nice, right?
That would be nice.
But you guys are at the forefront of women's jiu-jitsu. So I think that actually there are a lot of people to pick from in men's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
There's a lot of current athletes. There's a lot of former athletes. But for a woman in the sport... in the UK, there's a handful of women to look up to, and you're one of them.
I think that's been quite a steep learning curve for me to experience, having got my black belt. You know that there becomes a lot of responsibility from it in terms of how you conduct yourself in the gym, but it also kind of spills over into your personal life, or, you know, the choices that you make, or who you choose to represent, or whichever. But I think if you're a good person, people know that you're a good person. You can't please everybody. Everybody's going to have a different view and a different opinion on something.
Yeah, 100%.
Why are you smiling?
Because I'm just thinking, I was thinking of all of my haters, which I do love.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Do you have any haters?
Probably.
I have
Actually,
some great great ones.
There was a couple of people who spoke to, without naming names of even my friend, a good friend of mine, who said that I was arrogant and a bit of a dick, really. And I was like, have they met me? Because
Wait, this is a friend of you? Or
no, this is
okay.
they told a close friend of mine that oh, why do you either hang out with this person or whichever, because she's a bit of a dick or whatever. And I was like, and she told me, like, we were away competing and like just having like a couple of glasses of wine after the competition or whichever, and she was like, oh yeah, like this person said this to me, didn't tell me who they were, so I have no idea who they were. I mean, I've never forgotten it in my life ever. But I was so shocked by this, and I thought, how can somebody have such a what I feel like a complete different idea of who I am in comparison to what, like, kind of what social media says I am, or when I talk to people, I'm the person who, if I pass you at competition, I will always say hello. I will always ask how people are. I may not remember your name. I'm very bad with names, but I'm always like, hey, how's everything going? Amazing. Are you competing today? Yeah. Even if I'm competing, I'm not the person that's like, no, I can't speak to anybody. That actually relaxes me and makes me be in the moment, and I enjoy it. Whereas some people, for example, Brad doesn't like to talk to people before competition. We barely speak. If he's competing at the same competition I'm competing at, we barely speak. And I'm happy with that because I'm used to it now. And that's his way of being like, I need to focus right now. This is about me. And I'm like, that's great. And a lot of people think he's very arrogant. And a lot of people have kind of said this, and it's very polar opposite. The people that know him, that really know him, know that he's literally like one of the softest people ever. He's got a very big heart, and he's generally a really, really good person. But the people who don't know him and only see him at competition when he's in that zone and he's not speaking to people are very much like, oh, well, he's a bit of a dick. And I'm like, isn't that crazy how we just judge people immediately? Yeah. And I've learned from that. And I know now, like, so I went and spent some time in Malaga with Amelia and Santeri. And I didn't really know Santeri that well, or Amelia for that factor. Yeah. And I was like, these are just very beautiful people, And she was like, come and stay with us. Like, so friendly, literally opened her doors. And I was like, Amelia. So we were hanging out and chatting, and I realised that she is like one of the most relaxed, loveliest people you'll ever meet. Like, will go above and beyond to make you feel comfortable, but in a very, like, genuine way. Yeah. And I was like, Amelia, is Santeri really grumpy? And she was like, oh, no, like, everybody thinks he's really grumpy, he doesn't really smile. She's like, that's just him, like, that's just how he is. And I was like, I don't know, like, maybe he doesn't like me. I said, because obviously him and Brad have fought as well. Okay. And so, but they don't really speak to each other that much. And I was like, I don't know if they like each other. And then when I met Santeri, just a genuinely nice guy. I mean, he just doesn't really smile that much. But on the outside, I was like, this guy's really arrogant. I don't, Yeah. And then I was like, but she's really nice. This is such a strange mix up. And then obviously having met him, again, just very relaxed, but very, very comfortable with themselves, And I thought, man, people have got this, or I have got this all wrong. I immediately have this impression of you because you're not very smiley, and because I am very smiley, and Amelia is also very smiley, and that I thought he was, completely arrogant. And that's kind of how people see Brad. And it's interesting, but I don't know how people get that just from me. Do you know what I mean? I don't think there's really not many occasions where people see that side of me. Brad will see that side of me when I'm like volatile and, depressed or feeling grumpy and miserable and snapping at him and I don't understand the technique, and, he gets it because he's the closest person to me. Yeah. But nobody else really sees it, I don't think.
Well, at least you're not holding on to this one person who said that you were.
No, not at all.
How long ago was this as well?
This was I competed in Paris only last year. You know the picture that you posted?
Oh yeah.
When I won the double gold, that was when I found out that this person said I was arrogant and not a very nice person. Look, this one person. How many haters do you have?
I want to confess that.
Is it you?
It was just a bad time for me. I have great ones, but I have a lot of internet stuff, so people have funny comments on my internet stuff all the time. But yeah, it's great. People think that you'll have to try harder to upset me. They have some great ones. After I fought ADCC, there was a fake Facebook account.
Oh, of yours? Of you?
Yeah. First name Raspberry Ape, surname is a fag. That was, and I did a video of me crying in the shower after reading it. But obviously just brilliant. I literally thought that I'd made it. I qualified for ADCC 4 and ADCC. I was like, I'm still trying hard to get into this game. And I was like, oh, someone's made a fake Facebook account. I've made it.
Oh, really? Yeah,
I've got loads.
So popular. I've got haters.
I've got loads. They're great.
No way.
Yeah, there was one on Reddit who was brilliant, who just seemed to hate everything about me and Mill Hill and everything to do with it. But then I did like a Reddit Ask Me Anything, and she started commenting on that and bitching about me, and then because I don't know who she is. She might be listening to this.
Yeah,
I hope she is.
Probably.
But she trained at RGA, and she like the other comments that she'd made. She'd really slagged off Mauricio, and she'd slagged off a load of the instructors at RGA, and then she was saying something about the Polaris guys shouting at, when I fought Jake Shields and some of my guys got drunk and shouted obscenities. And they were like, I can't believe how disgusting they was, how disrespectful. I'm like, wait a minute, aren't you the girl who is talking shit about your instructor's dad? And she just deleted her account, deleted all of the messages she ever posted. But I'm still looking for you. I'm still looking for you. I'm going to find you.
Oh my God.
I'm going to find her one day.
Probably somebody that,
But there's loads. I had one the other day, which was like on YouTube, on the podcast with Kurt Osiander.
Yeah.
Do you ever listen to that?
Not yet,
It's really funny. He gets really drunk and really high. Not my fault at all. But I was like, I'm not going to stop him. That's how he wants to live his life.
Yeah.
And they were like, I don't like this interviewer. He's very tricksy. Never trust a man.
No way.
Never trust a man who won't drink with someone else or probe him. I'm like, imagine I got as shit faced as Kurt did on that podcast. It would be a fucking disaster. But
and it was live. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the only bit that I've ever experienced. Again, I don't look for it personally, but I'm very much like I don't comment on stuff on like people's things. Like I don't enter into any. There's some stuff that absolutely outrages me, but I don't enter into it. I'm never going to be that person. And maybe because I am such a nice person and people don't really know me, but I'm happy about that. They also don't have that much to kind of comment on. But then equally, sometimes I play it a little bit safe in terms of with my opinions or things that, I don't know, I feel strongly about or I don't feel strongly about. My problem is that I am on the fence a lot of time with a lot of things because and again, it's kind of down to I can feel very strongly about something and I think, no, this is absolutely not acceptable. And then I will listen to somebody. I'm very open and I listen to a lot of people and I don't like to impose my ideas necessarily on people. I keep them for myself. If people want to hear it from me, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, well, this is how I feel about it. And then I talk to a couple of other people and I'm like, it's never black and white. It's never... unless it's like, somebody murdered somebody on the floor and you watch them do it, like, yeah, they killed them,
But he might have had a good reason to do it.
Yeah, who knows? Do you know what I mean? And I don't like to judge people in terms of like their choices or what they decide to do. There are certain things that I don't respect. Like, there's a certain competitor that I can think of that I don't necessarily agree with what she's doing in terms of like, collecting a lot of default medals and kind of publishing this but that's her choice. I'm never going to say to her or call her out on it and be like, this is not cool. Do you know what I mean? Because she's going to be like, well done. Like, I don't really give a shit what you think about it. And that's just how I choose to live my life.
There really isn't anything more pathetic than arguing with people on the internet.
Oh God, yeah. I would never enter. There are literally some things that absolutely outrage me and I'm just like,
who cares?
Who cares?
Anyway, Sam Cook, what's next for you?
In terms of
quitting
retiring.
jiu-jitsu?
It's a control thing. It's me saying, I don't have to compete if I don't want to.
Okay. Well, you don't have to compete if you don't want to.
No. But I'm also this person who is always, when I'm in a good mental state and I have my right mind on, I'm always looking to achieve. I'm always trying to work towards better, whether it be clinical practice in work. I'm always trying to find out what the most recent evidence is or the most research on this topic or that topic. A, because I like to be in the know.
Yeah.
And B, because... I'm always pushing for better and I'm willing to challenge those things. I'm willing to kind of bring to practice. I've been in a bit of a tricky role at the moment. So I'm in a part-time post, which was a pilot role in the hospital that I'm at the minute. And they brought it in because they needed somebody to kind of basically manage their critical care. So historically, within physiotherapy, you have different areas like respiratory, neurology, musculoskeletal, orthopedics, blah, blah, blah. I'm a respiratory physiotherapist, and within this hospital, usually the respiratory physiotherapist will run the critical care units. Basically, they manage that, and you have different levels within that. Physios rotate in, get skilled up, rotate back out. So I'm static in critical care. But this hospital that I've been working in recently, it's a new post in that all their therapists are all neurophysios. So I've come in as the sole respiratory physio to try and run the critical care unit. Yeah. And it's been a really interesting and a really good learning experience for me. It's basically having to develop a whole service, which is not really the problem, but it's not really being that well supported from higher up. So then if you don't have the support from higher up, there's only so much I can do.
Yeah.
So the post is coming to an end anyway. It does go into a full-time post, but I was at this point where I wasn't really sure what I was doing, whether I wanted to apply for a full-time post there. And then I realised this is probably too much for me to be taking on as a sole person without support from above, you know? I can't feel like I'm coming to work every day at the bottom of a mountain.
Sure.
I need to at least be making some steps. So which is why my next job is within a hospital with an already established respiratory team within critical care. And slightly different area. It's like cardiology and oncology, critical care. So, how did I get onto this topic?
Don't know.
Well,
You've got me.
What were we talking about?
What you?
Oh, we were talking about what was next.
Yeah.
I'm really close to the microphone.
That's fine.
But why did we get there?
I don't know.
It's left me. Anyway.
Control.
Probably control.
Control.
I think to summarise, I'm probably a bit of a control freak at times.
Yeah.
Other times I can run with it, and I feel like as I'm getting older, I've become definitely more controlling. And the link with like anxiety and worry and stuff is definitely an age thing. It's not, I never used to worry about anything when I was younger. I wouldn't really care. Now I go through phases of, again, not caring for a couple of weeks. And then there might be 2 weeks where I really struggle with who I am and where I'm going and what I'm doing. And, you know, when you're talking about like identifying as a jiu-jitsu person, it's been such a big part of my life. And I've almost hidden behind it for a lot of things. So I'm a social person at times. My closest friends live all over the place at the moment. They're all eventually kind of like moving back to Bristol. So I don't see them that frequently. I'm not really one to hang out in a big group of girls. I really struggle in that kind of environment because I just don't know really where I fit into that. And I've always been like, I need to go to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I can't come out this weekend. I can't come to your, maybe not your wedding, but I can't do, you know, certain things because I have to go train. And maybe I've hidden behind that for a lot. And it kind of scares me to be able to then remove that and almost lead like a normal life of like somebody who works 9 to 5 again.
This would be in the
every
scenario
night.
where you stop competing in jiu-jitsu.
So much, yeah. And it worries me because I'm always looking to, that's how we got into it, because I'm always looking to achieve something. And I don't know, I thought this maybe was London life. I don't know whether it's living in London and living in that fast pace where feeling like you always have to be stepping up the ladder. I'm pretty much at the highest point in my physio career right now. There's not much higher I can go apart from management. So work's always going to be there for the rest of my life. I understand that. And jiu-jitsu competing is not necessarily.
I think you've still got a lot. I think you've still got many years at the top of the game.
Yeah, but then what about, I also have a biological clock.
Okay.
What happens if, you know, at some point I want to have a family?
That's fair enough. Shit,
Brad's no.
It's got real.
No, do you know what I
Brad,
mean?
if you're
I mean,
listening
Brad
to this
loves
right
kids.
now-
Brad would have kids now. He doesn't really, you know, he's I don't know. There's no kind of like nothing will ever stop him from doing anything because my mind says, no, that's not possible, like blah, 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 whatever. His mind goes, of course, why not? But he's probably much more kind of like that family orientated than what I am. You know, to me, I'm kind of just putting it off for as long as
You can
possible.
have kids and still do jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, you can.
You get like
Karen
mum strength. That's a
old
legit
lady
thing.
strength.
No, it's a legit thing.
Is
you
it?
get like a massive hormone. It's like you're on steroids.
No way. Funny because obviously before that, everything goes really lax and kind of like stretched and.
Yeah. No. You I'm pretty sure that's like a proven thing. After you have
God.
kids, you become stronger.
What have I been doing?
Now's the time.
But you know what I mean? That's a really
Bradley,
frustrating thing.
Get ready.
Poor Brad. Sorry, Brad. But that's a really like frustrating thing for me to have to think about that. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to. I've always lived my life by my own rules. You know, if work was stopping me from doing something, I left my job. If you know, living in Bristol wasn't getting me towards my goal, I moved to London. Like I've always
Can't do that with kids.
No, exactly. And that is such a huge thing for
Just
me.
imagine you've got this like 6-month-old baby. Like
I'm moving to.
I'm sorry, I just
India.
You're just really toxic in my life right now. I just got to move away for a little
I'm
bit.
going to put you in the freezer, get you to cool off for a little bit. You know, yeah, it is a huge step, and it annoys me that I have to think about this. I mean, people do have children.
That was not what I was expecting.
a lot
But like,
later in the-
like,
What?
so what's your competition goals? I have a biological clock, Daniel.
But it's true. But then I talk to friends who aren't even in relationships, you know, like, and
Yeah.
still trying to date people, and they're like, you know, Sam, I'm like, you know, early 30s. You've got nothing to worry about. You're potentially in a stable relationship where you know you could bring a family into this cruel world, but. you know, I have to be prepared and ready to do that. So, and I'm not saying like this year is, you know, like, you know, we're only just moving. I'm living in a shared house. I mean, we're moving out. It's great. So Brad and I feel like moving more towards adulting life, and we're renting our own place in London. Next week we move out, which is yay. I'm happy about that. It's good. I'm so sick of sharing with random people who are just like incredibly messy and
fair enough.
But so yeah, and obviously he's younger. So there's a bit of an age gap between us. But I don't know. We're just figuring it out as we go along. So as much as I say like, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, don't listen to anything.
Yeah,
because
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
It may not, yeah.
Are you just saying that because you've always got that option?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I think it is just a control thing. I do get tired with feeling like I have to always be preparing for something. I always have to be restricting something, but actually I live life much better like that.
Yeah, okay.
If you give me too much freedom, I won't make the most of it. Yeah. I like regimented. I like making the most out of my time. Do you know what I mean? Some days if I have a day off, I'm like, think of all the hours in the day I've got. I'm going to get up at 6:30. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
And then you do fuck all.
But if I'm not competing, I don't do it.
Yeah.
I might go to training in the evening, but in the daytime, hours disappear of me sat watching Netflix or, you know, reading a book or scrolling through social media or whichever. I like to be always doing something. So then I think, well, if I'm not competing, what am I going to do? And I can progress in my job, but there's only, you know...
What about doing things in jiu-jitsu? It's interesting because I don't think I've ever heard anyone, and it's really cool to hear you say it, that not that you don't care, but for you, jiu-jitsu is your journey. Whereas for a lot, and I think the reason that you can do that is because you have another job. Because a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete, in the UK anyway, a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete is an instructor as well.
Yeah.
Whether that's classes, privates or seminars, you have to teach as well. So it's very rarely that people can be, you are essentially a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete who does all of the athlete bit and none of the teaching bit because you have a job to do that. So
I do teach a class.
No, I know you teach a class, but you know, it's not a massive part of your life like it would be for most other full-time jiu-jitsu people. I don't necessarily like full-time jiu-jitsu athlete. Yeah, like you are full-time jiu-jitsu. That's like teaching or coaching or whatever.
Yeah, your livelihood is jiu-jitsu.
So for a lot of people, I think outside of competing, there's still a lot of things in the grappling world for them to do. Whereas for you, that might not be the case. No.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Eventually, so obviously it's Brad's dream to open up his own gym. His whole life is jiu-jitsu. He takes so much from coaching as well as competing, you know. And obviously that's all he's known. He's such a creature of habit. Whereas I've really struggled with having consistent things in my life because I'm a bit volatile at times. So jiu-jitsu has always been consistent in terms of, but I took 9 months off. And then I do take breaks. So like the other week I took 2 weeks off. It was to heal my foot and heal my mind, basically. The two things. But it's still always going to be there. I've invested way too much time now to ever turn my back on it. But other than that, I mean, physio world will always be there. I'm a qualified physio. That's for life. But I don't know. Everything else, I'm can be very volatile and I like to change things a lot. So I've moved every year in London. Every time I've lived here, I move. And again, it's a control thing. So when I have anxiety, I look at houses that I can't afford to buy.
Sure.
And this comforts me, but it also makes me like, I need stability. I need stability. I need to buy a house. I need to have this. I need to do that. I need to have stability. And then the next week, I'm like, I need to leave the country. I literally need to go and leave the country and go to Tokyo and do this. And I'm like, and I struggle with it. So poor Brad, like, who is very much a creature of habit and very level in terms of his patterns, you know, his routine. He doesn't like moving. He doesn't, you know, it took me a long time to even get him to move to London, which I understand. Like, he loves Birmingham. His life's there. His family's there. All his friends are there. Yeah. It was a huge step. It took a long time. I got there. Yeah. But you know, he was kind of part living with me when I was southeast London in East Dulwich, and he'd found his coffee shop that he likes to go to and his barbers. And then I'm like, we're moving, and he's like, okay, where are we moving to, Sam? I'm like, we're going to move closer to the gym. I don't like to commute.
Yeah,
I like to be able to cycle to wherever I'm going to, 30, 45 minutes, whichever, and the rest of it is you know, closest that I can walk or cycle to, because I don't like
45 minutes cycling.
Yeah. I love cycling.
That's close.
Bad because I had a really bad bike accident, so it's taken me like since my Harry Potter scarf.
Yeah.
Since this was in 2012.
No way.
To only last year to get back on and buy a bike and actually get back cycling again.
Your chances of dying on a bike are significantly more than on an aeroplane for the next time you get on an aeroplane. Mm-hmm. If you've cycled around London for a year, you're unlikely to die in a plane crash.
Yeah.
If you haven't died already.
I'm my near-death experience. I've actually had a lot of near-death experiences. We can talk about them if you like.
Yeah, go
They're
on.
really random. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so him being a creature of habit and me being volatile, when I kind of get itchy feet and change things, this is what worries me about having a family. What if I'm like, no, you have to go, I want a new child? I mean, people say, it's unconditional love for your kids. I don't know if this is going to be right. What if one day I'm like, why did I do this? I'm tired. I don't know. Or I'll just run with it. Who knows? But these things worry me.
Hopefully you'll run with it.
Or maybe I just won't have kids. I don't know. I think we probably will. I don't know. But yeah, anyway. So what was I saying? Yeah, so every year in London, I would have moved. So when I originally came here, I was supported by Shoyroll and Tone, who has been like absolutely amazing. So I was staying in the Shoyroll studio whilst kind of working for them and training at LFF. And that was a great studio. I mean, most of the time I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor, but can't complain. And then moved to North London in my own place. And this is when I went kind of back locuming, temp working, and loved that up there. But then again, got itchy feet and moved the next year, and then have now moved again, and now I'm moving again. But I'm hoping that I've kind of settled down. But I don't know whether it's just society that's like, oh, you need to buy a house. We're one of the only countries in Europe that buys their houses because we have really shit renting rights. Yeah. So I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Amsterdam. She said, oh no, we've got much better renting rights. We can rent our apartment for 5 years. They can't kick us out. Because, how can you go into rented if you're going to have a family, and then maybe, let's say one day you and your 3 kids or whatever have to up and move out the house because the landlord wants to sell it. There's no security behind it. We're like, oh no, you have to buy a house. It's so expensive to buy a house. I don't know if I'd ever be able to buy a house, And I guess, I don't know. I'm just going off on tangents now. I was going to talk about marriage then.
I'll let you go for it. That's what you're here for, right?
Yeah. So I don't know how I got into the topic of me being so volatile.
Doesn't even matter.
It confuses me. I get lost here. My short-term memory is really bad. My long-term memory is equally really bad. Stability, houses, looking at houses. This is so weird. Like, I'll diligently go home and be like scrolling on Rightmove. Oh, this is a nice house. I could buy a house at Cheltenham. So I used to live in Cheltenham for 3 years when I first graduated as a physio. I love Cheltenham. It's such a nice area, but it's tiny.
Yeah.
It's tiny. So I think about us like opening a gym there, and because I'd still like to work part-time. This is how I got onto it. Brad would like to open a gym. I would obviously like to support on that. I think we have something to offer as two black belts from the UK. We've both been active competitors for a long time.
High level, yeah.
Hopefully we've gained quite a lot of experience by teaching, for gyms and stuff and what have you. And then eventually I think that would be quite a nice life. But I would think I would still work part-time because I enjoy that side of it. I don't get as... I think it might be different, It's like when you have your own family or you have your own business, you're much more invested. I feel like when you have your own business, it's like having a child. You can't take a day off. You know, you're fully invested in that because it's what you've created and you get a lot from that. And I'm sure that's what a lot of people feel, how Marco feels about his gym. There's over 1,000 members in that gym now. Like, it's huge. And it's all created by them. They must be so super proud of such a successful gym. So I think you start to get different things back from it.
Yeah.
So there are avenues. It's not like I'm going to just stop training and not, be invested in it. I would potentially probably still like to balance life later on. And then once the gym's really successful, then I won't work at all.
Yeah. There you go.
And I'll have a dog. I feel like you've made it in life if you have a dog and you have your own place so that you could have your dog in, or you have a garden that you could have a dog in. That's great. I feel
That's
like
the
a dog
goal.
will solve all my problems.
That's the goal. So competition-wise, what's next for you?
Okay. So the World Pro coming up in 2.5 weeks.
And then the Mundials.
And then the Worlds, yeah. World Pro is a big one. And again, like I said, because of the qualifiers, it's really pro, a non-Brazilian athlete to win the division. It's not one that I've medalled at ever since my 5th time. This will be my 5th time. So I'm really looking forward to going to that one and just giving it my best. But trying, again, not to put too much pressure on myself and just go and enjoy it. I fight so much better like this.
Yeah.
But then equally, it's like, oh, well, this could be your last competing year, Sam. That little voice in my head. You could win loads of money and this could be your last year. You could buy a house. You could put a deposit on a house with the money.
Well,
Stop.
How much is first place?
No, I think it's $6,000 this year. But I'm also in the world ranking, so I'm number 3 in the world.
How much is it at the Worlds?
Worlds now is dependent on numbers. So I think it's like, I wouldn't like to completely hazard a guess.
It's like massive, isn't it? It's like 40 grand or something.
No, it's only for the...
Isn't there a UAE comp that has like a stupid price?
So the UAE for the men, for the World Pro, first place is 10,000. But you also have the ranking. So the world ranking, first place for the men is 10,000.
Okay.
Actually, no, it must be more because first place for women is 10,000. Second place is 5,000. Third place is 3,000. So I'm in third place at the moment. I need to medal at the World Pro to maintain my third place. Yeah. And then I get to go to the nice evening dinner and wear a nice dress.
Is that what they do?
Yeah. I would do like an awards ceremony on the Saturday night.
In Abu Dhabi? Really?
Yeah, it's nice.
What a strange world.
It is. But they fund loads of money into it. And there's also for the men, the continental ranking. So like Adam Wojcicki, who's number one in Europe, will get 5,000 for being number one in Europe.
Yeah.
I'm number one in Europe for women, but we don't do it for the women yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, one day.
One day, exactly. It's growing.
Give me one near-death experience.
Oh my God. I have so many.
How many?
So many.
Okay, give me
So the bike, wait, I'm going to give you a few.
Okay.
So the bike, I lost the battle with the car. So I was going on my way to training in Cheltenham. I had a car at this point, but it was in Bristol for an MOT, and my bike helmet was in the boot. I was a little bit late. So at this point,
were without a helmet?
Without a helmet, yeah. I know. But it was like 6:45 at night. There was barely, it was 5 minutes down the road, literally. I was just a bit late and I should have ran there rather than cycled. Jumped on my bike. I had, if I remember correctly, I had my like Skins leggings on and then a pair of Warrior, like I never wore shorts like this. I have no idea why I put it on. Some giant tatami hoodie and these white Warrior shorts, like white and black. Such a weird thing. Anyway, coming down out of my road, no cars on the road whatsoever. This woman starts to pull out of the leisure centre, so she stays. So I thought she must see me. There's no cars. Why she stopped? Literally, as I go in front of her, drives straight into me.
Really?
So up over the bonnet, onto the floor. Must have just gone straight head into the floor because it wasn't really scathed anywhere else.
Yeah.
Kind of like sort of walk up, crawled to the side. Had no vision in my left eye. I was like, flip neck, I can't. I was like, bloody hell, I can't see. But then I was kind of aware it wasn't in any pain, but something was going on.
Pouring with blood.
And this man comes out of nowhere and is like, oh my God, like you're bleeding. Like opens my bag, takes my gi out. I was like, don't use my gi to clean up my blood.
Yeah,
I think it was an Atama. But I couldn't really see him. So then I kind of was like fumbling around. My right eye I could see through. And I was like, don't use this. Like, and so he whipped off his t-shirt and I was like, I think this is a naked man. Like now stood over me, dabbing my head. This woman got out of the car. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't see you. And I was like, oh, I'm lit up like a freaking Christmas tree. And you still didn't see me. Anyway, called the ambulance. Never forget the ambulance men because they were called Peter and Paul. Never had concussion before in my life. So didn't knock myself out or anything. But sat in the ambulance and they were like, have you got someone that we can call? And I was like, yeah, my mum. And then I looked at my phone and I was like, I can't unlock my phone. And they're like, oh, you hit your head pretty hard. Do you remember your passcode? I was like, no. And they got really upset because I've never been concussed before. And they were like, do you know your mum's number? I know my mum's number off by heart. She must have had it for at least 30 years, I think, probably. Wait, maybe not since then. When did mobile phones come out? It was about 14, 15, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah. About 26 years. Same number all along. And I was like, I can't remember this. So then got super, super upset. And anyway, managed to get into my phone and called her. I don't know how. And I was like, hi, Mum. I've had an accident. They're going to take me to the hospital. So they're like, do you want to go to Cheltenham where a nurse can stitch up your face? Or do you want to go to Gloucester where Max Fax can do it? And I was like, please take me to Max Fax. Like, this is my face. I would quite like a nice, neat scar. So they took me over there. I still had cycle clips on my feet. So as I stepped out, the ambulance just collapsed on the floor where my knees just gave way. And they were just like, oh, sorry. And I was like, okay. I just picked myself up and take myself in. They wouldn't let me see it. I was like, can I not just have a look at it? They're like, there's a big gaping hole in your head, basically.
So did you never see it?
They took a picture of it. I've got pictures, actually.
Can you show me after?
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I forget that we're here.
Oh, no. Now we're videoing it. Okay, just keep talking, though.
Sorry.
No, you can get it out and show the camera, but keep talking at the same time.
Anyway, so I saw it, and it was just
if you want to get it out, you can.
Yeah, it's really easy to find. A big flap of skin, basically, on the top of my head. So I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm going to have a Harry Potter scar. That was one near-death experience. When I was younger, I swallowed a 2p piece in the buggy, and my aunt gave me a 2p piece. My aunt doesn't have kids. And naturally, I ate it. Chocolate button. My mum had to whip me up. I literally went blue in the face.
Oh, you choked on it?
Yeah, choked on it. She had to turn the buggy upside down because they couldn't get me out quick enough to try and get the 2p out. This is after it had been stitched up. So I had all the muscle stitched and the skin stitched.
That does not look like you.
On top. No, I just come back from Thailand as well, so I was quite yellow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was also quite chubby.
Should we show that?
Yeah, go for it. Might want to make it a bit brighter.
I can't tell whether that.
But yeah, that was a depressive time. But yeah, that was after they'd stitched me up. I didn't have the gaping hole one. That was when it started to get better.
Yeah.
Obviously. And then I just had a Harry Potter scar when I went back to work. And I was working between Cheltenham and Gloucester at the time, and they were like, oh, she could come into work. And Yestin, one of the physios that was there at the time, was like, have you seen her face? She's literally going to scare patients. Like, it's not really a good idea. Anyway, so the 2 pence piece, what would be another one? Had quite a traumatic experience when I was 12. I don't know why that's why I'm talking about oversharer. So I was staying at my aunt's house because she used to have horses.
Okay.
So I used to stay with her before I had my own horses. So go and stay there pretty much every Friday and Saturday night. Usually she used to have a sweet dish, and I would binge on the sweets like every Friday and then throw up Friday night. It was ridiculous. And I look back on it now, I was like, why didn't I just stop? She was like, you had no like self-control. So we'd eat and then was like throwing up in the toilet one night at the age of 12 years old. And then we had like some kind of knock on the door. So she lived in a caravan type site, like a mobile home, randomly in Bristol somewhere. Not in a field or anything, on like a site. So there was like a knock on the door, and then I heard like some kerfuffle, and I was literally like one of those toilets where the toilet was like next to the door. So I just like opened the door and heard like shouting and stuff going on. I was like, what's going on? It's not really a near-death experience. I mean, maybe it is kind of. Anyway. So I kind of like came out, and then there was all this commotion, and it was an armed robbery. So basically three guys had smashed the door through, come in with like these handguns, and were threatening my uncle and stuff. And I don't think it was obviously planned. He was a car dealer, so would always usually have like quite a lot of cash, and he was also in a gypsy family. So,
sure.
So my aunt at the time had been diagnosed with breast cancer, so she wasn't going to have treatment or anything either, like, which is nuts, right? Yeah, no, she did. She's all clear. She's fine. So she was very relaxed about this whole situation. I don't know. So anyway, I came out. They obviously didn't expect me to be there. So I, at this point, had this like Vodafone GSM phone, and I was like, oh my God, they're taking all the phones. I need to hide my phone. So I kind of like kept it hidden, because I was like, how are we going to call? They didn't have a landline. I was like, we're not going to be able to call the police. So one of the guys, so they were, they had like full on balaclavas. I remember it like yesterday.
It's quite crazy.
And yeah, so he was like, come with me. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to go from bad to worse. So he basically took me to the bedroom and said, stay here. Because I think they just didn't want me, they didn't expect me to be there.
Yeah.
So didn't want me involved. So then I hid my phone in the drawer. I was like, 12 years old. I think that's pretty smart. And then he came back, and I was like, oh no. He's like, no, follow me. And I was like, he's going to hold the gun to my head and threaten my uncle. Because they were like hitting my uncle over the head with these handguns. He was on his knees in the middle of the front room. So
you're watching all of this?
Huh?
You're watching all of this?
Yeah, I was there, like, obviously in the bedroom, and then they brought me forward. So they've got zip ties, and I'm like, oh my God, we're in for a long night. It's not like, obviously I don't think that at the time. I was 12, I was just mortified. But when I look back on it, so he was in the front room. My aunt and I were stood in the hallway. She was really like so surprisingly calm, but I think it's because she thought she was dying. So
she's
she was
like,
just,
I have made my peace with
She was
death.
just like,
there are no threats you can make.
Yeah,
to me.
exactly. Like nothing really matters right now. I mean, it kind of does. Hello.
Of course, yeah.
So we're stood next to each other, and the door's there, the key's on the floor, and they're in the front room. But looking at us like, you stay there, what's going on? Like, they were like, tell us where, some rubbish. I can't even remember what was said. And she just looked at me and was like, run. And I was like, but like, I didn't even hesitate. But at the time, you kind of like, what if they lock the door? Like, I don't even know if the door's locked. So I just ran out the door. She said, run, I went. So I opened the door, ran out, because they all chased me. So I ran across the field. There's a house opposite with like a field, like quite long grass. I had no idea where I was going, or if there was any barbed wire there. There was barbed wire there. Ran straight into this barbed wire. I got completely tangled up, but they all chased after me. And I was literally like, don't shoot me. I'm 12 years old. Don't shoot me. And I was like, it's game over. Like,
Is what you're saying to them?
Literally, yeah. I was just screaming at them. Because what can you do? I don't know. And I couldn't go anywhere. I was just tangled in this barbed wire. So, but because they all followed me, surprised by it, my uncle then ran down the road, and then they obviously followed me, panicked, got in the car and drove off. Wow. I was like, madness, right? 12 years old. So, and then obviously, came back in the house, and the police came round, and obviously like they took print stuff, but they said like, you guys were in for a long night. There's all these zip ties all over the floor. I don't know if they ever caught up with them or whatever, but pretty traumatized by that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I think it's probably linked to, I have a lot of nightmares and night terrors. But so even though it's not an issue for me to talk about.
Do you know what? Something we haven't spoken about.
Sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah. Crazy sleep. I feel like it's probably linked. It's the one of the, like, probably the most traumatic experience I'll ever go through, like, or have been through, hopefully, or have been through. And now the whole world knows about it, or at least the jiu-jitsu community. How many followers do you have?
Oh, many good looking.
One of my
excellent
near-death experiences. There were a few more other ones anyway. But yeah, but I can talk. It's not something I've ever held on to. I've always been a real talker. So any of my problems or issues, I don't tend to keep them inside. I'm very like vocal about them, people who are closest to me and now everybody else. Yeah. But yeah, it was during a really rough time where my aunt had breast cancer. This had just happened. I had to go back to school. And then I remember being in RS or something, like religious studies, where they were talking about some kind of shooting. I was like, I just need to leave. I just need to leave the room.
Oh, really?
Right now. Yeah.
Bit PTSD.
Maybe, I don't know. I think because of the type of person that I am, and that I feel like not like I dealt with it, but I can, again, talk quite freely about it. Yeah. I'm not sure it's really affected me that much, but I genuinely do think it's affected my sleep so much. My sleep has been like horrific.
You always have lots of nightmares?
Night terrors, yeah.
Proper terrors?
Proper night terrors. Proper like heart racing, feeling like it's jumping out of my chest, run out of the room screaming.
Really?
Night terrors, yeah. So they've been a lot better recently since Brad moved to London, and I think because I feel safer.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're also sleep. So I have so many weird stories like with sleep, where I'm awake. The thing is,
sleepwalk or?
Yeah, not so much sleepwalk. I found myself when I first moved to Cheltenham in the hallway twice. Flicked the light on, was like, oh, okay, back to bed. Then found myself there again, like maybe half an hour later.
Wow.
But that's probably as far as it's gone with sleepwalking. I remember when I was on an A-level biology project, biology like week somewhere down on the coast, and we were measuring Ascophyllum nodosum, which was seaweed, offshore and onshore. Don't know why I remember that either. And I was on the top bunk, which was a terrible, terrible choice, really. And then I was just patting down the wall, sharing the room with two other people, and couldn't get out. I'm always trying to get away from something, and I think it's probably linked. So I'm always trying to get out and trying to find the door, and I'm like banging on the wall like this, and people are like, Sam,
whilst you're asleep?
Whilst I'm awake. So I'm like asleep awake. I'm like hallucinating.
Sure.
And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, nothing. Like literally trying to climb off the edge of the top bunk. And then I start to come to a little bit when people start to speak to me, and then go back to sleep. With my ex-boyfriend, the guy who originally got me into jiu-jitsu, there are so many nights where I would just wake him up and be like, there's a woman in your bathroom. So I'd get visitors. People would always come and visit me, stand at the edge of the bed, and I got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, I'm really tired. I don't know what you want. I'm not even going to be scared by you. I'm just going to turn over and go to sleep. And then they would kind of go away, but would be awake and see them as well. But my nan also has this, so she sees a lot of people and visits them. She like hits out at them and everything. But I think you're not real because I'm awake. But I can still see you, so I don't have to flick the light on, and then I'm usually okay. But yeah, I would just get exhausted by it. So there was this one woman that would come and visit him. He used to have an ensuite bathroom. And I'd be like, oh, Matt, wake up. There's a woman in your bathroom. And he's like, what? And I was like, please, there's like a neurotic woman strolling around your bathroom, and she really wants to talk to you. Can you go and talk to her a minute? Oh my God. And he's like,
this would terrify me.
Yeah, exactly, right?
If you were my girlfriend,
there's worse.
And you were saying that, I'd be like, what the? Are you seeing ghosts or some shit?
Yeah. So, well, this is kind of what I thought it was. And then, so he would got up and went to the bathroom, come back, and I'm like, sound asleep. I have no idea what you're talking about. But I don't recognize people either. Like, that's got much less now. But so again with my ex, like one time I sat on the edge of the bed and like a psycho was just like staring at him, and I was like, who is that? And I was like, what have I done? Who is that? Like, I don't recognize them and I'm staring at them and trying to find features that I recognize, but I don't know who they are. Other worse ones.
You have a very interesting brain.
Someone
should study that.
Pint glasses. So work think I get sleep apnea. So they're like, we think maybe you stop breathing because of my heart rate increase and like the night terrors and visions that I get. So I was meant to go for a sleep study at the Royal Free.
I'm genuinely going to lend you my ring at some point.
I think you should, because it would be interesting. Be like, no sleep, wandering around all night, visited by multiple people. I just kind of got to the point where I accepted the fact that people will visit me at night, and like this happens to my nan, maybe, I don't know. But I don't know if I believe in ghosts, I don't know. But I definitely feel like some kind of presence, but it's usually when I'm asleep. So it's like, it's just not rational. My brain's just overthinking or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I've smashed pint glasses of water. So now I can't, like I keep a bottle by my bed because I always hit out at things, or I just run out the room. So, or I sit bolt upright. So there are times where I've just like gotten up, run out the room straight away. And then my heart's like, and I'm like, fuck, what am I running from? Sorry.
Yeah.
I should be
You're allowed to swear.
Okay.
I've sworn many times over this
Okay.
podcast. You're allowed to.
And I don't know, what am I running, what's going on? And my heart is beating so hard. I generally feel like I'm going to give myself a heart attack. So then I have to come back into the room and kind of calm myself down. And obviously it's so much worse if I'm on my own.
Yeah.
Because I can't rationalise, I don't know what's going on. And then usually, like you said earlier, we were talking about sleep and stuff, you go straight back into the dream and the nightmare too. Sitting bolt upright. And again, usually like Brad's been there and he's experienced it, and I'm like waking him up and chatting to him, and he's like, what are you talking about? Like, so 2 nights ago, his breathing, so his kind of, he doesn't snore, but he's got a bit like was sending me a message. And it was to do with somebody's head, somebody who'd been like decapitated, and my blind, like quite a big blind, was me looking at this person telling me I have to look at this head. So his breathing was sending me some. The thing is, I remember all of them too. So I'm awake. I'm not even like, I'm not asleep in it. I feel like I'm awake. And that, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, I can definitely, I can see a head there. And I'm trying to go sleep and something, whatever. And his breathing's like, no, you need to look at this head. And I was like, all right, okay. So then I'm looking and I was like, well, I can't really see it. And then I start to come to and I come and wake up. But there are times I'm like bolt upright in bed. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, it's frightening. Like sometimes there's a deep sleep and sometimes it can be pretty light. And I'm sitting bolt up and then he's like, it's okay, it's all right, everything's okay. And then I just go back to sleep. Running out of the room is a specialty. It gets so much worse with the more training.
Really?
Crazy. But I used to go into work and they'd be like, how is your sleep?
You should definitely get a sleep study.
Yeah.
100%.
So staying anywhere new is the same. I get confused where I am in the night. I mean, I think that can be quite normal.
Yeah,
like staying
relatively.
if you're a bit sleepy, unfamiliar. But it's the fact that I'm awake and I can still see things.
Yeah, I get a lot of nightmares. I thought it was normal to get nightmares like every time you slept.
Yeah.
And then people were just like, I was like, I was talking about it, like, no, that's not normal. But I just feel like they give me I don't have what you have. Sometimes I wake up and I'm pretty panicked, but I usually work out that it was a dream pretty fast. But I feel like it gives me that I'm more prepared for life. Because they're usually very violent. I'm either trying to fight for my life or killing people. So then when I'm in real life, I'm like, I actually feel like I'm pretty. Nothing can really phase me too. Nothing can phase me too much because I've been through like some horrific scenarios already in my dreams. But yeah,
see, I feel exhausted.
Not as bad as yours. You should definitely get a sleep study.
Yeah,
or get a sleep tracker. Do you have like a Fitbit?
No. So one time I had when I injured my knee and I was hopping around on crutches. I was staying at my mum's house and I had just the app, like that little orange one, Sleep Cycle or something. It was, and it used to do your record. So it would trigger and record whenever you started talking or it heard a noise. 19 recordings I had in one night, and there was me talking about my aunt's dog that had died, and I was like, "Hey, Fudge, like, how are you?" Like, she'd visited me, and I was talking to her, the dog, and then I was like,
maybe you could talk to maybe they're ghosts.
Maybe. But then I was talking about my mum and I was like, well, if you don't feel well, you shouldn't be going to work. And it was literally as clear as day, and where I was just chatting away. But so I've always kind of sleep talking. But for some reason, the more I train, the much worse it is. So I can fall into like a deep sleep really early, but then they just become so active, and then I'm in the morning, I'm just absolutely exhausted, but I feel like I've just not had a really good deep sleep. But work were like, we think maybe you get sleep apnea, but I didn't want to be diagnosed with sleep apnea because then I'd have to wear like an NIV mask overnight because I'm basically becoming hypoxic, which is why I'm hallucinating. But
then you also might die if you stop breathing in your sleep.
I know, but
maybe get a sleep study. Just consider
it's my heart, and I'm like, calm down, like, it's okay.
That makes sense if you're running out of oxygen and you're
exactly. My body's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
We need some oxygen to the brain.
Yeah, go get a sleep cycle.
Lucid dreaming, though, so I can also control my dreams. So I'm also very aware.
Very interesting.
That if I'm in a dream and I'm like, well, I can fly, and I'll just fly.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you bring that on, or is that just like, did you train to do that?
No.
Because you can train to do that.
Yeah, no.
You can like teach yourself to lucid dream, and they say you gotta realize that you're in a dream.
Yeah.
Do you know, like in Inception?
Yeah.
They all have like a little
totem.
a totem where they know whether they're dreaming or not. And then if you need to realize that you're dreaming for you to be able to control it. So they say one of them is looking at your hands. Because apparently like your brain, you know how it's really hard to draw hands?
Yeah.
So our brains struggle with like the complexity of hands.
Right.
So if you look at your hands in a dream, often they won't be very good.
Okay.
You know, they'll be obviously not real hands.
Yeah.
So what you'd have to do, and I've tried to do it before, I haven't put too much effort into it, but I'd love to be able to do it. You just get some good rounds in, some good jiu-jitsu rounds, you know, just like imagine that Bouchesh is there and you're having some rounds with them. But just like every day, just randomly look at your hands and just get into a habit of looking at your hands. And you've got to make it so habitual that you would do it in your dream. And then you look at your hands, you go, oh, I'm dreaming. Now I control it.
See, I know. I just know. And I'm like, I'm aware of this situation. Like, let's say maybe you're having an inappropriate dream. And I'm like, I can manipulate this how I want. Absolutely. And then I enjoy the dream so much more. Or sometimes it's frustrating.
Look at your hands next time you do it and tell me what they look like.
Interesting. But then it scares me because I think, well, how do I know that this is a dream? And what if I'm about to jump off a building?
Maybe you're in a dream right now.
Yeah, maybe.
Look at you.
Which spin my little.
Sam, my last question. We've done 2.5 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
See?
That's good going.
My last question is, was it as bad as you thought it would be?
Melting. No, not at all. Although I have told a lot of my life story and a lot of things that people don't know about me, but I'm also okay with that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on my podcast, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
It took me many years to get you to come on, but I'm very glad that you finally agreed to do it.
Was it what you expected?
Yeah, I have no expectation when I'm talking to someone. So I was very... I would say that it was more than what I expected.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
You're more crazy than what I expected. There's more depth to you.
Well, that's what you want, though. Imagine if you're just normal.
Yeah.
How boring that would be.
Exactly. Brad's life would be so much easier. Let's move to Oxford. No, why? We don't know anyone there. We don't have any jobs. Yeah, maybe not.
Sam, thank you very much, and good luck. You're competing in 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
So good luck, and I hope you win that tournament.
Thanks very much. But I'm sweating.
Cool. That is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to follow Sam, then check out her Instagram, which is Samantha Cook BJJ. I know that she would appreciate you giving her a follow, so get on there and do that. As always, if you want to follow or if you want to contact me, you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at raspberry_ape. You can email me at podcast@raspberryape.com. Check out my website, which is raspberryape.com, where you can buy merch and things like that. Or my YouTube channel, where this and many other things, including podcasts and non-podcast related things, will be found, which is youtube.com/raspberryape. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and I will catch you next time.